parents skipped my wedding for my sister's divorce. 3 years later, they want her to be a second mother to my baby, so I lawyered up. I'm 27, female, and have been married for 3 years. My connection with my older sister, Emily, 30, female, has always been strained, but things became even more toxic when she decided to destroy my wedding. Emily was going through a divorce at the time. Emily's marriage was falling apart because her husband did not want children, and she had always wanted to be a mother. Now, I'm not here to argue whether or not that's a deal breaker, because it absolutely is. But Emily knew about his feelings before they married. He made it apparent that he did not want children, but she married him nonetheless, hoping to persuade him otherwise. So, just as I was preparing my wedding, their marriage was on its final legs. My fiancé, now husband, and I had been together for 4 years and were thrilled to finally tie the wedding. We had saved for months and planned every detail. We were prepared for it. But Emily thought my wedding was a personal attack on her. At first, it was minor comments, such as how I was being inconsiderate by arranging a wedding while she was going through a divorce. I blew it off because Emily has always been a drama queen. She was the best-behaved child growing up. My parents thought she could never do anything wrong, while I was typically the one who got in trouble for not doing things her way. When she was upset, everything came to a halt until she felt better. So it wasn't surprising that she was upset about my wedding, but I expected her to get over it. Then my parents became involved. They called and requested that I postpone the wedding. Let me say it again. They asked me to postpone my wedding because Emily was getting divorced. I assumed they were joking at first. When I saw they were serious, I informed them it wasn't going to happen. My fiancé and I had already made deposits and sent out invites. Plus, why should Emily's difficulties overshadow my wedding? Her divorce was not my fault, and I would not put my life on hold for her. My parents didn't take it well. They said I was being selfish, and that family should come first. I claimed that Emily's divorce had nothing to do with my wedding and that she could either be pleased for me or not attend. That's when they dropped the bombshell. They would not come until I postponed the wedding. They were willing to miss their own daughter's wedding to spare Emily's feelings. I was heartbroken. I'd always known they preferred Emily, but this seemed like a betrayal on a deeper level. I told them they may make their own judgments, but I was not going to change my plans. I figured that was the end of it. If they don't want to come, that's fine. At the very least, I'd have the support of my fiancé, friends, and his family. But Emily wasn't finished yet. She began spreading lies among the rest of the family. She initially accused me of being harsh for marrying her while she was going through a difficult time. Some others felt sorry for her, but they didn't believe that was enough of an excuse to miss my wedding. So Emily escalated. She began telling others that I was the reason her marriage terminated. According to her, I encouraged her husband to leave her because I was jealous of her and couldn't bear the thought of her having children before me. To be clear, I knew very nothing about her husband. We had only had a few chats over the years, and none of them were serious or intimate. The thought that I would interfere with their marriage is absurd. But Emily lied with such confidence that others began to believe her. Some of our family even blocked me without saying anything. I later learned via a cousin that Emily had told them that I had been shoving it in her face about my impending marriage and talking about how I had persuaded her husband to leave her. None of it was true, but by the time I learned about it, the damage had been done. When my wedding day eventually arrived, hardly any of my relatives attended. It was devastating. My parents, relatives, uncles, and even some of my cousins did not turn up. Only a few cousins from my side of the family showed there, and they refused to believe Emily's tales. The remainder of the visitors included my friends, my husband's friends, and his relatives. I'll be honest, the weeks leading up to the wedding were some of the most difficult of my life. I pondered trying to clear my name, but it seemed pointless. Emily had already poisoned the well, so it would have been my word against hers. Besides, the ones who supported her had already made up their minds. I was not going to waste my time with those who did not want to hear the truth. Despite everything, my wedding day was stunning. My husband and his family went out of their way to show me love and support. My pals made me laugh and dance all night. For a few hours, I nearly forgot about the vacant chairs and the family members who had preferred Emily over me. But no matter how much fun I had, the ache persisted. After the wedding, I broke off communication with Emily and my parents. I could not forgive them for what they had done. Emily didn't simply skip my wedding, she aggressively sought to wreck it, and instead of supporting me, my parents encouraged her actions. It's been 3 years since I spoke with any of them. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted by refusing to communicate, but then I remember how much agony they caused me during what should have been one of the best periods of my life. Emily's jealousy and my parents' partiality made my wedding a nightmare. I've moved on in many respects, yet the anger remains. Fast forward 3 years, and I have created a life that I am proud of. My husband and I are doing fine, and we recently shared some fantastic news. I am pregnant with our first child. It should have been a happy occasion, but Emily and my parents needed to find a way back into my life. This is what occurred. A few weeks ago, my husband and I decided to announce our pregnancy on social media. We kept the announcement basic, with a photo of us holding a sonogram and a text about how pleased we are. We hadn't communicated with Emily or my parents in years, so I didn't believe they would notice. However, they appear to be still prowling on my social media, as my mother contacted me unexpectedly hours later. When I saw her name on my phone, I stopped. She hadn't reached out in 3 years, not even on holidays or birthdays. She suddenly wanted to talk. I hesitated but eventually responded. The talk began with a phony, amicable tone. She congratulated me on my pregnancy, saying it was excellent news. Then she got to the real reason she was calling. Emily. Emily has been trying to have a kid since her divorce, but hasn't been successful. Emily's mother informed me that she had undergone several rounds of IVF, all of which failed, and that she was now infertile. To be honest, hearing that made me feel horrible. For her. Infertility is not something I would wish on anyone. But then my mother dropped the bombshell. She and my father saw this pregnancy as an opportunity for me to reconcile with Emily. I was confused at first. What does my pregnancy have to do with Emily? My mother said that, because Emily is unable to have her own children, bonding with my kid would be therapeutic for her. She advised that I allow Emily to play an active role in my child's life, as if my kid might replace the vacuum created by her infertility. She even stated, "It would be beneficial for your baby to have 2 mothers." I was speechless. This woman hadn't spoken to me in 3 years, and now she wanted me to share my newborn kid with the sister who ruined my wedding. I told her no right away. I said that Emily and I were not on speaking terms, and there was no way I was letting her near my baby. My mother tried to guilt trip me, telling me that Emily was distraught by her infertility and needed her family's support more than ever. She even hinted that I was being unkind by depriving her the opportunity to bond with her future niece or nephew. I abruptly shut her down. I told her I couldn't fix Emily's life or make her feel better about her decisions. I also pointed out that if they truly cared about me or my baby, they would not have waited until I was pregnant to contact them. My mother did not take it well. She accused me of being harsh, claiming that I was letting old grudges ruin my chance to re-establish our family. I ended the phone before saying anything I'd regret. Over the next few days, both my father and Emily attempted to reach me. My father's approach was similar to my mother's. He presented it as an opportunity for us to recover as a family, insisting Emily's intentions were pure. According to him, Emily was not attempting to take over or replace me as a mother. She only wanted to be involved because the baby will be related to her by blood. He even suggested that I get Emily's help once the baby arrived. I told him the same thing I told my mother. Number, I didn't need Emily's aid, and I certainly didn't want her near my child. My spouse and I already have a strong support structure in his family and among our friends. Emily and my parents could have ignored me for another 3 years if they wanted to. Emily's communications, on the other hand, told a completely different narrative. She didn't bother faking niceness. She accused me of being selfish and claimed I owed her the opportunity to be a part of my baby's life. She even branded me callous because I refused to include her. I initially ignored her texts, but when she began pestering me, I eventually blocked her. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but my parents were unwilling to give up. They contacted me back a few days later, this time together, and attempted to push the idea one more time. My mother genuinely stated, "Emily's been through so much, and this baby could be the family's way of making things right." I couldn't believe what I heard. My unborn child hadn't even arrived yet, and they were already treating it like a peace sacrifice for Emily. That was when I lost it. I told them I saw through their phony worry and wouldn't let them shame me into this idiotic scheme. I also made it obvious that if they kept pushing, I would permanently block them, just as I had with Emily. They tried to dispute, but I ended the call before they could say anything else. Since then, I've been grappling with a variety of feelings. On the one hand, I feel justified in staying firm. My parents and Emily demonstrated their priorities by skipping my wedding and spreading rumors about me. They do not deserve a place in my child's life. But, on the other hand, I can't help but be angry and upset that they would try to manipulate me in this way. It's as if they've learned nothing over the last 3 years. For the time being, I am concentrating on my pregnancy and attempting to have a positive attitude. My husband has been fantastic throughout all, and his family has been extremely supportive. They've informed me that I owe Emily and my parents nothing. And honestly, they're correct. This baby represents a new chapter for me and my husband, and I refuse to allow toxic individuals to spoil it. While I've tried to move on for the past few years, the issue with Emily has always remained unresolved. I knew she lied to the family to sabotage my wedding, but I never learned the complete tale of her life at the time. That changed about a year after my wedding, when my husband and I met Emily's ex-husband. Let's call him Jack. By chance. What he told us blew my head and helped me understand Emily's conduct. It all began one afternoon when my husband and I went out for lunch at a little restaurant that we had been meaning to explore. We were halfway through our meal when I noticed Jack sitting a few tables away with a bunch of co-workers. I wasn't sure if he'd know us, but he eventually came over to say hi. The conversation began casually. He congratulated us on our wedding and apologized for not attending. I informed him that I understood, given the timing of his divorce from Emily. That's when events took an unexpected turn. My husband made an offhand remark about how ironic it was that Jack hadn't attended the wedding, given that Emily hadn't even shown up herself. Jack looked perplexed and inquired, "What do you mean she didn't go? She told me she was busy helping you plan everything." I nearly choked on my drink. Emily had used my wedding as a pretext to postpone their divorce proceedings. According to Jack, she constantly postponed their mediation meetings, stating she was too busy with wedding preparations. Meanwhile, she was aggressively spreading lies about me among the rest of the family. Jack stated that he found Emily's interest in my wedding unusual, especially given that she and I had never been close, but he felt she was just trying to keep up appearances during the divorce. That was when my husband and I told Jack the truth. Emily had done absolutely nothing to help with my wedding. In fact, she went out of her way to ruin it. We discussed how she propagated allegations that I had convinced him to leave her and had been bragging about it to the family. Jack was stunned. He said that he had no idea she was lying about me and apologized for not reaching out to explain things sooner. Then Jack dropped the true bombshell, the genuine reason for their divorce. Emily had been telling everyone for years that their marriage had dissolved because they couldn't agree to have children. She wanted to be a mother, but Jack was adamant about not having children. That was the story she clung to, and the majority of people believed it. But, according to Jack, there was a deeper cause behind their breakup. Jack stated that after months of battling over kids, he had begun to reevaluate his position. He sincerely loved Emily and was willing to consider becoming a father if it meant saving their marriage. One day, he decided to sit her down and tell her that he was ready to talk about having children. He anticipated her to be overjoyed, but instead she said something that drastically altered his perception of her. Emily admitted that she had stopped taking her birth control months ago without notifying him. She stated that she had hoped to become pregnant by accident so that he would be forced to accept it. She even chuckled about it, as if it were a smart scheme. Jack was shocked. He stated that he felt thoroughly betrayed, not just because she lied to him, but also because she removed his ability to make an informed decision about such a significant life decision. This was the last straw for him. He felt he could no longer trust her and filed for divorce shortly thereafter. Hearing this floored me. I knew Emily was manipulative, but this was a whole other level. I couldn't believe she tried to baby trap her own husband and lied to everyone about the cause for their divorce. Her behavior at my wedding made a lot more sense. She was lashing out at me because she couldn't accept the repercussions of her behavior. Jack told us that after he filed for divorce, Emily became more unpredictable. She'd switch between asking him to come back and blaming him for wrecking her life. She even tried to convince their mutual friends that Jack was the one who lied about wanting children, despite the fact that he had been open about his feelings from the beginning. Most of their pals saw through her lies, but it didn't deter her from trying. After our conversation with Jack, I had a range of feelings. On one hand, I was relieved to finally know what was going on behind the scenes. It explained so much about Emily's actions and validated my decision to cut her off. However, it made me even angrier. Emily's falsehoods wrecked not only her marriage, but also my relationship with the majority of our family. And for what? To shift blame away from herself. I considered confronting Emily or sharing what I'd learned with the rest of the family, but I ultimately concluded it wasn't worth it. I'd already lost contact with Emily and my parents by that point, and I didn't want to become involved in the drama again. I figured the truth would come out soon, and I didn't think it was my obligation to expose her. Looking back, that conversation with Jack was pivotal for me. It helped me release some of the shame I'd been feeling over how things ended with my family. For a long time, I questioned whether I should have done more to defend myself, or if I had overreacted by shutting them off. But after realizing the entire scope of Emily's falsehoods, I knew I had done everything I could to protect myself. Emily's actions were not simply a mistake or a lapse of judgment. They were premeditated, deliberate decisions to harm others around her for her own gain. I'd spent too much of my life as collateral damage in Emily's plans, and I refused to let her pull me down any longer. Then came the last straw. It began a few weeks ago when I banned Emily and my parents after their two mothers' proposal for my baby. I figured that was the end of it. They couldn't reach me directly anymore, so what else could they do? It turns out, a lot. Emily decided to air her frustrations publicly. The first post was vague but clearly addressed to me. She wrote something like, "It's sad when family lets you down, especially when you've always tried to support them. Some people just don't understand loyalty or forgiveness." I didn't react, but it irritated me because I knew she was casting herself as the victim again. People left comments like, "You're so strong, and whoever hurt you doesn't deserve you." This is classic sympathy fishing. At first I thought, whatever, let her vent. I'm not engaging. But then the post became more explicit. Emily started making not-so-subtle suggestions about my pregnancy, saying things like, "It's hard to be happy for someone who's always tried to ruin your life." In another post, she said, "Some people are so selfish that they won't even consider sharing their blessings with others who need them more." It was clear she was attempting to portray me as the bad guy for not allowing her to be a part of my baby's life. My mother started chiming in, which was the final straw. She wrote her own essay on how some individuals in this family have always been jealous and manipulative, turning their backs on us when we needed them the most. She wrote the following: "It's heartbreaking to see your own child reject her sister's pain." I'm not sure she recognized how absurd it was to accuse me of rejecting Emily's pain after she and Emily had neglected mine for years. These posts weren't just unpleasant, they were harmful. Extended family members who hadn't spoken with me in years began phoning to check in and inquire what was going on. Some of them were openly accusatory, saying things like, "Why can't you just make peace with Emily? Family is everything. You need to let this go." It felt like they'd all decided I was the villain before even asking for my side of the story. After a few weeks of this insanity, I determined I would no longer sit back and let Emily dominate the narrative. I hadn't said anything about her lying in years because I wanted to keep the peace, but that plan was plainly not working. If Emily wanted to air our dirty laundry on social media, I'd be fine with that. I contacted Emily's ex-husband, Jack, to explain what was going on. We'd chatted a few times since our encounter at the restaurant, and we were on friendly terms. I asked whether he would be cool with my telling the truth about their divorce, and he agreed. He even volunteered to back me up in case anyone questioned my story. So I made a huge post to explain everything. I described how Emily destroyed my wedding by spreading lies about me, how my parents condone her behavior, and how they attempted to guilt me into sharing my baby with her. Then I revealed the truth behind her divorce. She had discreetly stopped taking birth control in order to baby trap Jack, and her manipulative behavior was the true cause of their divorce. The reaction was explosive. Within hours, my phone was flooded with texts from family members. Some were encouraging, stating that they had no idea Emily was capable of such actions. Others were enraged, accusing me of leaking sensitive family information and kicking Emily while she was down. Emily and my parents were unusually quiet at first, which told me they had no idea how to spin this. But, of course, they did not remain silent for long. A few days later, Emily posted that I had manufactured the entire tale out of envy. She claimed I had always been upset with how close she was to our parents and accused me of attempting to turn the family against her. My parents backed her up, saying they just wanted to restore the family and never expected such harshness from me. At this time, I wasn't even upset. I was drained. I had told the truth, and anyone who still wanted to believe Emily was welcome to do so. I was not going to waste my time debating with those who had already made up their minds. I left the post up for nearly a week before deleting it. Not because I regretted what I said, but because I didn't want negativity on my social media. Since then, things have cooled down a little. The majority of Emily's family has gone quiet, and a handful have even contacted out to apologize for previously accepting her lies. Emily and my parents, on the other hand, continue to portray themselves as victims. They've made a few more posts about how families should stick together no matter what, and how they simply want peace, but I haven't responded. I believe I have done everything I can to defend myself. If people continue to believe Emily's version of events, that's their problem, not mine. I have a baby on the way, and I am not going to let toxic people take up any more space in my life. That's where things stand right now. If you've ever had a family member publicize your drama on social media, I'd love to learn how you dealt with it. Thank you for reading. Hello everyone, the channel has been slowing down a bit, and I've spent a lot of effort locating these stories for you. If you enjoy the article, please click the subscribe button. It means everything and contributes to the continued success of this adventure. Let us grow together. Now let's get to the last update. Final update. Hello Reddit. I didn't intend to post again, but the universe and my family had other intentions. I believed I had finished this chapter, but Emily, 30, female, and my parents were not ready to let go. If you've been following my posts, you've already heard the tale. If not, here's a quick recap. My sister Emily destroyed my wedding, my parents supported her, and then they all tried to guilt me into letting Emily play second mother to my unborn child. I've had no interaction with them in a long time, but they've now taken their entitlement to a whole new level. This update could be the wildest yet, so buckle up. A few weeks ago, I noticed unusual activity on my social media accounts. My pregnancy posts, simple updates like baby bump pics or nursery prep, received weird remarks. At first, it was just general statements like, "It's sad when people forget the meaning of family," or, "Some babies are blessings from more than one person." I assumed it was just random trolls, but then I noticed the accounts were suspiciously new, with no profile pictures or personal postings. My instincts told me it was Emily or my parents behind them. I shook it aside since, honestly, I'm used to their shenanigans by now. However, things quickly became very serious. One account left a comment saying, "You should be careful. Some people don't deserve to raise children." That one shocked me. I erased the comment and blocked the account, but I couldn't shake the sense that someone was watching me. My landlord called and things took a terrible turn. Someone had called, pretending to be me, and asked whether I was planning to move out soon. They claimed to be my sister and offered to assist with the process. Fortunately, my landlord did not trust them and called me to confirm. I was infuriated. This was a clear violation of my privacy, and I had no doubt Emily was behind it. I confronted my parents, against my better judgment, and they didn't even dispute it. My mother replied something like, "Emily was just trying to help because she knows you'll need more space with the baby coming." I lost it. I told them it wasn't Emily's business to interfere with my housing problem, and she had no authority to call my landlord. My father tried to calm me down by saying, "She's just excited about the baby. Can't you let her be a part of this?" That's when I hung up. I wasn't going to waste my breath arguing with folks who clearly didn't understand how absurd this was. The final straw came last week when I found Emily and my parents had been contacting my husband's family without my knowledge. My mother-in-law called me, perplexed, because Emily had sent her a lengthy message over Facebook. Emily depicted herself as a victim in the message, stating that I had cut her out of my life for no reason and that she was distraught over being excluded from the lives of her nieces and nephew. She even recommended that my in-laws intercede between us because this baby deserves a whole family. My mother-in-law, bless her, shut that down right away. She informed Emily that we were content with our family and didn't want anyone meddling. But what bothered me the most was Emily's initial contact. It felt like a serious violation of boundaries. She wasn't only troubling me, she was involving my husband's family in her mess. After that, I decided it was enough. I filed a police report on the landlord incident and the harassing comments on social media. I also sent Emily and my parents a cease and desist letter through a lawyer, stating unequivocally that if they continued to harass me or my family, I would not hesitate to seek legal action. Of course, they did not take it well. My mother called, sobbing, and said, "How could you do this to your own family?" Emily sent me a lengthy email accusing me of being cruel and nasty. She even remarked, "You're depriving me of the chance to experience motherhood through your child." That line made my skin crawl. I don't know how she doesn't notice how insane she sounds. My father attempted to shame me, saying, "This is tearing the family apart. You've made your point, but can't we just move on?" I reminded him I wasn't the one ripping the family apart. They were. I've given them numerous opportunities to respect my boundaries, and they've squandered each one. I don't even feel bad about cutting them off anymore. I feel relieved now. I've entirely avoided contact. I changed my phone number, made all of my social media private, and informed my landlord and work about the matter in case they tried anything else. My spouse and I are also considering adding security cameras around our home. I hate that it has come to this, but I am not taking any chances when it comes to my baby's safety. Despite everything, I am experiencing a peculiar sense of peace. For the first time in years, I have regained control of my life. My husband and I are thinking about the future and getting ready for our baby's birth. His family has been fantastic throughout this, and I am so appreciative for their support. This kid will be surrounded by so much love, and that is all that matters. My parents burned my face with skin bleach because I wasn't white enough. Now they want forgiveness, but I took them to court instead. My family is the most prejudiced folks I've ever encountered. Whenever we went outside during the summer, my mother would count how many times my older sister and I stepped out of the shade, and when we arrived home, each time was equivalent to one hard slap. For years, our morning routine was our mother putting skin whitener from the Dollar Tree all over our bodies. The whiter we appeared, the better she would treat us. I recall constantly wanting to be a regular kid. In contrast, my sister was a whitewashed queen. Every night, she would set an alarm every 2 hours to disrupt her sleep as much as possible. She was often fatigued, which made her appear paler. What in the bumbaclot? Instead of reminding her that her health was more essential than not looking Hispanic, our parents treated her like royalty. They'd lavish her with beautiful gowns, costly jewelry, and virtually everything she desired. Soon, it was evident who the golden kid was. And if I wanted their love, I needed to do this. But I was desperate to find other ways. Getting straight A's in school, cleaning the entire house every weekend, and giving my parents foot massages. Thanks, honey. But I really wish you worked this hard on getting beautiful pale skin like your sister, they'd repeatedly say. And after my parents sent me a literal bleach hair product from Africa for my 16th birthday, I spent the entire day bawling into my Barnes & Noble teddy bear in my room. That's when my sister entered and hugged me. I expected her to respond that she would always be there for me. That despite my skin tone I was still her sister, and that was all that counted. But no. Aurora, I love you, and I want to help you. Look at me. I gazed at her gaunt body, the eye bags that had formed beneath her eyes, and the chemical burns on her scalp from straightening her hair. If I can look this beautiful, so can you. I swear I thought she was pranking me. However, the sparkle in her eyes told me otherwise. She honestly believed that treating yourself in this manner was the correct approach. From then on, I began wearing a foundation that was 2 shades too light for me and always found a way to conceal the rest of my body. Not because I disliked my brown skin or natural curls, but merely to make my parents happy. After all, they were the individuals who gave birth to me. 6 years later, I recently graduated from the University of Florida. When Thanksgiving arrived last year, I was in a great mood. I had begun running and spent so much time outside that I was forced to accept my natural hunger and beauty. And I loved it. My boyfriend Carlos also enjoyed it. Hey. He was half Puerto Rican, half Italian, and extremely aware of the concept of internalized racism. But he was also white passing, so I assumed everything with my parents would be fine, until reality struck. I arrived at my parents' place with him holding my hand. I had even applied a bit lighter foundation to soften the punch of everything. When the door opened, I saw a woman who resembled my sister, but was more unhappy, pale, and emaciated. My heart broke, and I assume hers did as well, for as soon as she spotted us she cried out, "Dios mío, what are you doing to our bloodline?" My partner immediately clasped my hand as if to say, "It's okay. We've got this." Meanwhile, tears streamed down my cheeks. "My love, what have you done to yourself?" My mother cried, attempting to untie my slick-back hairdo and fix it with her fingers. And that's when she noticed Carlos, her mouth extended so wide that I feared her jaw was going to shatter in half. "Ah, you almost had me believing that this monkey was actually your boyfriend. But I understand. You're young, just messing around." She then chuckled to herself, as if it were the most amusing thing in the world. My father then took my hand and led me inside, instantly handing my sister the skin whitening cream to apply to my face. But it wasn't the same one I used as a child. No, this one hurts. "Stop. Get away from me," I cried, tears spilling down my cheeks. Within seconds, blisters sprang on my face, and I began peeling all over. As I yelled, Carlos phoned the hospital. I assumed that by this stage, my folks would realize they were being morons. But no. My father wrestled with Carlos to get the phone from him. Pain is beauty. AITA will be beautiful. Meanwhile, My entire face felt like it had been dipped in hot sauce 100 times. Fortunately, they did arrive, and by the time I was seen by nurses, my brows had been burned off. When I awoke the next morning from the skin grafting process, I found my lover caressing my hand and calling me lovely, until I checked my phone. I instantly discovered that I had received dozens of texts and missed calls. The first voicemail was hostile, telling me I had disappointed the family. The second one was threatening. By the 10th, my sister begged me not to file charges. "There are our parents," she mentioned in the message. "They just want what's best for us. Please come home and we can fix this." I couldn't believe she was still protecting them despite everything. Her voice sounded empty and resigned, as if she'd given up fighting years ago. Carlos sat with me as I listened to the messages, his expression becoming increasingly anxious with each one. "Lily," he said gently, "this isn't normal. What they did to you is abuse. It's always been abused." He gently grasped my hand, taking care not to dislodge the IV line. I knew he was correct, but hearing him say it aloud made something snap within me. I've spent years attempting to earn love that should have been unconditional. I've been allowing them to physically and emotionally harm me because I believed that was what family meant. I'd normalized their behavior, excused their nastiness, and blamed myself for failing to meet their expectations. The hospital social worker arrived later that day. She inquired about my burns, and for the first time in my life, I revealed the entire truth about my family. I couldn't tell you what I did next in this short video. The complete tale is on the channel, which you can find at the link below. I was still in the hospital when I decided to file charges. To be honest, I was afraid when the social worker assisted me in filing a police report. My hands were so shaky that I could scarcely complete the document. Officer Ramirez, an elderly man, took my testimony and kept looking at me with sorrowful eyes, as if he'd seen something like this before. "You're doing the right thing," he said as I recounted the years of abuse. "I'm not going to lie, I almost backed out 50 times during the chat. There's a strange shame associated with reporting your own parents, even if they've physically burned your face off with illegal skin bleach." Carlos was with me the entire time. He held my hand throughout the questioning and gave me genuine food because hospital food is just garbage. The nurses continued to call him my husband, and neither of us corrected them. It felt good, like a glimpse into a future in which I had a real family who cared about me. My phone began filling up with texts from my parents and sister. I eventually turned it off since reading them was raising my blood pressure, which the doctor warned was bad for my rehabilitation. My mother alternated between threatening and begging me to come home. My father texted me extensive lines about family devotion and how I was disrespecting my heritage by acting like this. The irony of his discussing heritage while practically attempting to erase it off my flesh was not lost on me. My sister Seraphine sent the worst messages. She texted, "They are going to take me away if you do this. Please, Aurora. I need these. I'm not sure how to live any other way." That one struck me hard. I understood exactly what she meant. When your entire identity revolves around pleasing others, the prospect of losing that structure is terrifying. I was freed after 3 days. My face was still wrapped, and I resembled a mummy from a low-budget horror film. The doctor informed me that I would require follow-up appointments for the next 3 months to ensure that the skin grafts were healing properly. They also handed me this special cream, which cost more than my monthly rent. Thank God Carlos's insurance covered most of it. We headed straight to Carlos's apartment. I couldn't bear coming back to my house knowing my folks might be there. Carlos lived in a tiny one-bedroom near college, with mismatched furnishings and a kitchen barely wide enough to turn around in, but it felt safer than anywhere else I'd lived. My first night away from the hospital, I had a complete collapse. I'm talking about nasty crying, snot all over the place. Carlos simply embraced me and let me express myself fully. I kept saying how I should have done something sooner, how I should have protected Seraphine, and how I might have been overreacting. Carlos simply listened, wiping away my tears gently to avoid the bandages. "You know what the craziest part is?" I asked him at 3 a.m., when we were both still up. "A part of me still wants them to love me. How messed up is that?" The next morning, I awoke to a knock at the door. Carlos went to check while I hid in my bedroom, scared it could be my parents. It was not them. It was Officer Ramirez and another officer I had never met before. "We've spoken with your parents," Ramirez remarked when I eventually came out. "They're claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that you had an allergic reaction to a normal beauty product." I simply stared at him. Of course they'd say that. For years they've used excuses like this to cover up their cruelty. Officer Chen, the new officer, inquired as to whether I had any evidence of previous mistreatment. Did I have photos of the slap marks? Have I reported it before? Did I have the box for the product they used on me? I did not have any of that. Who photographs the cruelty they experienced as children? Who saves the empty bottles of the substances that harm them? I began to worry that they would not believe me, and that my parents would continue to get away with it as they did in the past. Then Carlos said up. The hospital has the chemical analysis of what was on her face. That should prove it wasn't a normal beauty product. Officer Chen nodded and made a note. We'll get that report. In the meantime, we've issued a temporary restraining order. Your parents can't contact you or come near you. After they departed, I checked my phone again. 17 missed calls from my mother, 12 from my father, and 23 from Seraphine, plus a slew of texts. The most recent one from Seraphine felt my stomach plummet. They believe you're mentally unstable and have always made up things to get attention. They have photographs of you appearing joyful at family gatherings to prove it. I showed Carlos the message. They're going to twist everything, I told them. They'll make it look like I'm the crazy one. Carlos suggested I go out to anyone who may have seen the abuse over time. My thoughts immediately turned to my old neighbor, Mrs. Patel, who would let me hide in her apartment when things got nasty at home. There was also my high school counselor, Mr. Thompson, who observed the makeup I wore to cover bruises but didn't press me when I made up an excuse about falling. I spent the next few days making calls and attempting to recuperate. Most folks remembered something vague about my family, but nothing precise enough to help. Mrs. Patel went to Arizona. Mr. Thompson vaguely remembered being concerned, but had no documentation. I was about to give up hope when I received a text message from an unfamiliar number. This is Jasmine, from college. Carlos gave me your number. I have photos from freshman year when you still had the chemical burns on your neck from home. Please let me know if they are willing to help. I had completely forgotten about those photos. Jasmine took them at a dorm party after my makeup had rubbed off. I was humiliated at the time and urged her to delete them. However, she never did. I quickly called her, and she agreed to send them over. Meanwhile, Carlos was a total rock star. He altered his work schedule to drive me to doctor visits, prepared proper meals instead of the ramen I'd been eating, and never complained about the fact that my belongings were now scattered across his little apartment. One night, I discovered him researching skincare for chemical burn recovery when he thought I was sleeping. About a week after filing the report, I received a call from a woman named Tiffany, who identified herself as a victim advocate from the district attorney's office. She stated that they were considering filing charges against my parents but wanted more information. We have the hospital records and the chemical analysis, she told me. The substance on your face contained hydroquinone at levels far exceeding legal limits, plus mercury compounds that are banned in cosmetics in the US. I was not surprised. My parents had always sought out the most powerful, harmful products, believing that they were more effective. What startled me was Tiffany's comment. We also have a statement from your sister. My heart has stopped. Seraphine made a statement against our parents? There was a pause in the line. Not exactly. She's supporting their version of events. Says you've always been jealous of her relationship with your parents and that you're making up the abuse for attention. I hung up the phone and flung it across the room. Carlos stood up from where he was working on his laptop and approached me. I told him what Tiffany had said, and he simply held me while I cried again. I was so tired of sobbing. She's scared, Carlos remarked. She's still living with them, right? She's doing what she needs to survive. I knew he was correct, but it still stung like hell. Seraphine had been there through everything. She had been subjected to similar, if not greater abuse than I had. How could she deny it now? The next day, I resolved to do something different. I called Seraphine instead of messaging. To my amazement, she responded. Lila, you need to drop this, she murmured quickly, her voice low, as if she was trying not to be overheard. They're really angry. Dad broke the coffee table yesterday. I've never seen him like this. I took a deep breath. Seraphine, they hurt us. They're still hurting you. Look at yourself. When was the last time you ate a full meal or slept through the night? I'm fine, she said abruptly. I'm beautiful. Everyone says so. You're disappearing, I replied softly. Every time I see you, there's less of you there. She was silent for so long that I assumed she had hung up. Then she said softly, I don't know how to be any other way. Neither did I informed her. But I'm learning. You can too. She hung up after that. I tried phoning back, but it went directly to voicemail. I left her a message telling her how much I loved her and that she could stay at Carlos's apartment if she ever needed it. The lawsuit against my parents proceeded slowly. There were interviews, documentation, and other interviews. Following the current event, the district attorney chose to charge them with violence and child endangerment. However, the years of past abuse were difficult to substantiate. Tiffany stated that without proof or witnesses, it would be my word versus theirs. Carlos suggested I start writing down whatever I could remember, including as many details as possible. Even if it doesn't help the case, added the lawyer, it might help you process everything. So I did. I purchased an inexpensive notebook from the school bookstore and began filling it with recollections. My mom once spanked me so hard that my nose bled after I played in the sprinklers at a friend's house. This Christmas, my father gifted Seraphine a gold necklace and me a bottle of skin-lightening lotion. I spent several mornings getting my hair cruelly straightened while being informed how awful my natural curls were. It seemed like I was lancing a wound when I wrote everything down. It stung, but the poison had to come out. Some nights, I could only write a paragraph before having to stop. Other times, I'd write for hours, the pages soaked with tears. Around 3 weeks after the Thanksgiving event, I received another surprise call. It came from my Aunt Rosa, my mother's sister who lived in Miami. We were not close. She relocated to Florida when I was little, and we only saw her at large family gatherings. "Aurora, I just heard what happened," she explained. Her accent was deeper than I recall. "Your mother called me crying, saying you were making up terrible lies about them." My stomach dropped. Great. They were now gathering their extended family against me. "It's not lies, Tia. They've been abusing me and Seraphine for years." There was a pause. Then Aunt Rosa said something that altered everything. "I know." 2 simple words, but they struck me like a truck. "You know?" "I suspected," she explained. "The way your mother was always obsessed with your appearance, how you girls never seemed to play outside like normal children. I asked her about it once and she got so defensive I never brought it up again. I should have done more." I sat on Carlos's couch, my legs suddenly wobbly. "Why are you calling me now?" "Because I believe you," she replied. "And because I found something. When your mother and I were growing up, our grandmother did similar things to her. I found old diaries of your mother's where she wrote about it. The skin bleaching, the obsession with looking more European. It was done to her too." This realization did not excuse my parents' actions, but it did help me understand them better. The pattern of abuse began long before I was born. My mother had internalized her grandmother's bigotry and handed it on to us. Aunt Rosa offered to send me the diaries and testify if needed. She also offered to let me stay with her in Miami if I needed to get away from my folks. I thanked her, but I assured her I was fine with sticking with Carlos for now. The following day, I had another dermatologist visit. The doctor was satisfied with the way my face was recovering. The redness was receding, and the new skin was developing normally. There would be some scarring, but less than they had feared. "You're lucky," the doctor told me as she examined me. "This could have been much worse." As we left the clinic, I noticed a familiar person in the parking lot. Seraphine was resting against her car, appearing considerably thinner than when I last saw her. When she noticed us, she stood up and walked over nervously. "What are you doing here?" I inquired, shocked. "I followed Mom's car when she went grocery shopping," she told me. "I knew you had an appointment today. I saw it on the calendar at home." Carlos stood just behind me, providing a protecting presence while also allowing us to speak freely. Seraphine cast a worried glance at him before returning her gaze to mine. "I've been thinking about what you said," she said as she disappeared. "I looked in the mirror this morning and couldn't recognize myself. I wanted to hug her, but she flinched when I got close. Seraphine, you can get help. You can get out. Like I did." She shook her head furiously. "I can't. They're watching me all the time now. Dad took my phone. I'm using Mom's while she's shopping." She peered over her shoulder, concerned. "I don't have anywhere to go. You can stay with us," Carlos answered quickly. "We'll make room." Seraphine looked at him as if he were speaking a strange language. The thought of someone offering help without expecting anything in return perplexed her. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "You're her sister," he stated simply, as if this explained everything. And I suppose that worked for him. Seraphine began to respond when her phone vibrated. She checked it, and her face turned pale. Mom's done shopping. I have to go. She turned to leave, but then paused and handed me a small USB drive. I found this in Dad's office. It's their financial records. They've been ordering that skin bleach from overseas for years. It's all there. The payments, the shipping information. I drove away startled. Seraphine, this could be really important for the case. I know, she replied. That's why I took it. She began walking away, then called over her shoulder. I'll try to come to your place tomorrow. Text me the address. Carlos held my hand while we watched her hurry across the parking lot. She's stronger than she thinks. We both are, I said. That night we examined the files on the USB device. Seraphine had been correct. Years of data revealed continuous procurement of unlawful skin-lightening goods from sources in Africa and Asia. Some of the substances listed were terrifying. Mercury compounds, high-concentration hydroquinone, and something called clidolropionate, which, according to a quick Google search, is a prescription-strength steroid never intended for long-term usage on the face. I quickly called Tiffany and informed her of the new proof. She appeared excited, claiming that this would considerably improve their case. She arranged for me to deliver the drive to her office the following morning. Seraphine's visit to Carlos's residence made me uneasy. What happens if our parents follow her? What if she changes her mind? Carlos advised that we tidy up and make sure there was food she might enjoy. I remembered she used to enjoy quesadillas before she began tightly regulating her diet, so we grabbed the ingredients for those. Seraphine remained unaccounted for the following day. I texted the number she had called from, but received no response. By evening, I was pacing Carlos's apartment, convinced that something had happened to her. Maybe she couldn't get away, Carlos speculated. Or maybe she's scared. Just as we were about to give up and eat dinner without her, there was a gentle knock on the door. Carlos inspected the peephole and quickly opened it. Seraphine stood there, a small backpack clutched against her chest, her face paler than usual. They know I took the drive, she said as soon as she got inside. Dad was looking for it everywhere. When he couldn't find it, he started screaming at Mom, saying she must have moved it. I left while they were fighting. I hugged her, and this time she did not back away. She felt delicate in my arms, like a bird with hollow bones. You're safe now, I told her, but I wasn't sure if that was true. Carlos made quesadillas while I helped Seraphine settle in. We didn't have much room, but we had cleared out a corner of the living room and set up an air mattress with fresh sheets and blankets. Seraphine looked at this simple setup as if it were a luxury hotel room. I haven't slept longer than 2 hours at a time in years, she admitted as she sat on the edge of the mattress. Mom said, beautiful people don't need much sleep. Well, tonight you can sleep as long as you want, I told the girl. No alarms. We ate supper together, and I watched Seraphine taking tiny bits and pushing food around her plate to make it appear as if she ate more than she did. I made no comment about it. Recovery would take time, for both of us. Seraphine showered after dinner. When she came out in one of Carlos's t-shirts, which draped like a dress on her tiny body, I spotted bruises on her arms that hadn't been there before. Did they hurt you when they found out about the drive? I inquired, attempting to keep my voice controlled. Seraphine gazed down at the marks, as if she were seeing them for the first time. Dad grabbed me. He does that sometimes when he's angry. She said it casually, as if she were discussing the weather. I snapped pictures of the bruises on my phone. More proof. Then I helped Seraphine apply some of my healing cream to their skin. After that, we sat together on the air mattress, unsure what to say. I'm sorry I told them you were lying, she muttered. I was scared. I know, I replied. You don't need to apologize. She fell asleep immediately, exhausted. I wrapped her in an extra blanket and joined Carlos in his bedroom. We discussed quietly about what to do next. Having Seraphine with us altered everything. We now needed to safeguard her too. The next morning, I called Tiffany to provide an update on the issue. She suggested that Seraphine come in and give her own statement now that she was free from our parents. Seraphine consented, but she was obviously afraid. What if they don't believe me either? She inquired as we drove to the district attorney's office. What if they think I'm making it up too? The bruises help, I responded, resentful that I had to speak such things. And we have the financial records now. Seraphine's interview lasted more than 2 hours. Carlos and I waited outside, neither of us saying much. When she eventually emerged, her eyes were red from sobbing, but she appeared lighter, as if she had just set down a heavy rucksack she had carried for miles. They believe me, she exclaimed, her voice full of surprise. They're going to add charges based on what happened to me too. Tiffany appeared after her and said that with Seraphine's testimony and the bank records, they now had a much stronger case. They were charging both of us with child abuse, child endangerment, and assault, as well as additional counts for importing illegal narcotics. We'll be requesting a court date soon, she told me. Both of you will likely need to testify. The prospect of confronting our parents in court made my stomach turn, but I nodded. We'll be ready. That afternoon, Officer Ramirez called us. Our parents were arrested. They were being held pending bail, which had been set so high that they would very likely be unable to pay it immediately. The news should have made me feel safe, but instead it left me feeling hollow. Seraphine reacted differently when I informed her. She burst into tears, but they were more of a relief than sad tears. It's really over, she kept asking. They can't make me go back? It's really over, I said, holding her while she wailed. The following weeks were a flurry of legal meetings, therapy visits, which Tiffany had scheduled for both of us, and adjusting to our new living arrangements. Carlos's small flat was crowded for 3 people, but we made it work. Seraphine slept on an inflatable mattress. I took the couch. Carlos maintained his bed. He never complained, even when Seraphine's nightmares disturbed us all, or I mistakenly used his toothbrush. Seraphine's physical condition was worrying. Years of sleep deprivation and restricted food have taken a heavy toll. We found a specialist who specializes in eating disorders, and she began seeing him twice per week. She cried the first time she ate a whole dinner without first calculating the calories or evaluating her skin tone. My face continues to recover. The dermatologist was delighted with my improvement, but she advised me to be extra cautious about sun exposure on the new skin. The irony was not lost on me. After years of being punished for sun exposure, I suddenly had a valid medical reason to avoid it. Our parents were eventually released on bond, with severe instructions not to contact us. They broke the instructions almost immediately, sending emails from new accounts, and even had people call us with messages. Tiffany assisted us in documenting every infringement, which she felt would only enhance the case against them. Christmas came and went. It was the first time I had spent a holiday apart from my folks. While there was some sadness, there was also a feeling of freedom. Carlos's family invited us to their celebration, and his mother prepared traditional Puerto Rican foods that reminded me of what my grandma used to cook before she died. Seraphine ate more that day than I had seen her do in years. We received notice in January that the trial would take place in March. As the date came, my anxiousness increased dramatically. I began experiencing panic episodes, often waking up gasping for oxygen, thinking I was back in my parents' house with searing chemicals on my face. Carlos advised that we all try something new to help manage our stress. He registered us for a painting class at the community center. I was horrible at it. My trees were green blobs, and my sunsets looked like someone poured orange juice on the canvas. But it was enjoyable, and for those 2 hours each week, I didn't worry about the trial, my parents, or the scars on my face. Seraphine was unexpectedly skilled at painting. Her first try at a landscape was actually rather good, with mountains that looked like mountains and a sky with perfect perspective. The instructor complimented her efforts, and I saw my sister's face light up with genuine pride, perhaps for the first time in her life. I never knew I could make something beautiful, she said later, instead of just trying to be beautiful. February saw an unexpected development. Aunt Rosa called to say she had talked with other family members about what had happened. To my surprise, other cousins and another aunt came out with their own accounts of my parents' actions. They'd noticed things throughout the years, such as our extreme attention to our looks, our flinching when our parents raised their hands, and our refusal to wear short sleeves even in the heat. They're willing to provide statements, Aunt Rosa stated. They should have spoken up sooner, but they're trying to do the right thing now. These fresh testimonies strengthened our case even further. Tiffany appeared to be more confident in the outcome, though she cautioned us that court battles can be unpredictable. As March neared, Seraphine made great improvement. She had gained a good amount of weight, and her hair was beginning to appear less brittle. She still struggled with sleep, frequently staying up late painting rather than setting an alarm to wake herself up. But it was a start in the right direction. I too was recuperating, both physically and emotionally. The scars on my face were lessening, but they would never totally disappear. I had started wearing my hair naturally all the time, loving the curls I had been trained to despise. Carlos claimed they suited me, and I started to agree. 1 week before the trial, we had an unexpected guest. Aunt Lucia, our father's sister, arrived unannounced at Carlos's apartment. Carlos was at work, so Seraphine and I were alone when she knocked. "Your parents sent me," she explained as soon as we answered the door. "They want to make a deal." Seraphine started to close the door, but Aunt Lucia stepped in. "Just hear me out. They're willing to plead guilty to reduce charges if you agree not to testify. They'll pay for your medical bills, Laya, and they'll leave you both alone forever." I stared at Seraphine, whose face had turned pale once more. "We need to talk about this," I told Aunt Lucia. "Come back tomorrow." After she went, Seraphine and I immediately contacted Tiffany. She warned against accepting any contract without her presence, and stated that she would be over that evening to address the matter. When Tiffany came, she stated that our parents were probably getting concerned about the trial. "The evidence against them is strong," she informed me. "They're trying to minimize the consequences." "What would happen if we agreed?" Seraphine inquired. "Would they go to jail at all?" "Probably not," Tiffany said. "With reduced charges, they might get probation, community service, maybe a fine." I reflected on all they'd done to us over the years, including the physical suffering, emotional scars, and years of brainwashing us to despise ourselves. "That doesn't seem like enough," I commented. "It's your decision," Tiffany said. "But remember, testifying means facing them in court. It means having your story questioned by their lawyer. It can be traumatic." Seraphine and I stayed very late that night discussing it. Part of me wanted to accept the arrangement, to avoid seeing our parents again, to get on with my life. But another portion required them to face real repercussions. "What do you want to do?" I asked Seraphine around midnight. She remained quiet for a long time before responding. "I want them to know they didn't break us. I want to look them in the eye and tell my story." We responded to Aunt Lucia the following day, when she returned. "No deal, we will testify." The week preceding the trial was heated. I had difficulties sleeping, and Carlos appeared to be on edge. Seraphine plunged herself into painting, producing dark, whirling images that accurately portrayed how I felt. Carlos prepared a special dinner for us the night before our trial. He'd prepared his grandmother's recipe for arroz con gandules, and even bought a bottle of sparkling cider for us to celebrate. "No matter what happens tomorrow," he added, lifting his glass, "you two are the bravest people I know, and whatever the outcome, we'll face it together." I looked at my sister across the table and Carlos beside me and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Whatever happened in court the next day, we had already achieved something significant. We'd broken the cycle. We'd discovered our voice. We had begun to heal. As we clink our glasses together, I realized that addressing our parents in court would be one of the most difficult things I'd ever done. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't facing difficult situations alone. The morning of the trial began with a spring thunderstorm. The rain beat against the windows as we dressed in our nicest clothing. Carlos wore a button-up shirt with a tie. I put on a modest blue outfit that revealed my natural skin tone. Seraphine chose a yellow sundress that made her appear younger, more fragile, yet, paradoxically, stronger. We drove to the courthouse quietly, each immersed in our own thoughts. As we arrived into the parking lot, I noticed our parents approaching the entrance, hunched under a large black umbrella. My mother had a hat pulled low over her face, as if she was trying to hide. My father walked stiffly alongside her, his back ramrod straight. "Are you ready?" Carlos inquired, turning off the engine. I looked at Seraphine, who gave a small nod. "As ready as we'll ever be," I said. We stepped into the courts together, eager to tell our stories and confront our past so that we could finally move forward. I felt like throwing up when I got into that courtroom. My hands were so shaky that I had to hide them in my pockets. Carlos maintained his arm around my shoulders the entire time, while Seraphine remained glued to the opposite side. The courtroom was smaller than I anticipated. Nothing like the fancy ones you see on TV. Just a standard room with wooden benches, fluorescent lighting, and a judge's bench in the front. Our parents were already sitting on the other side with their lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. My mother's hair was pushed back tightly and she was wearing more makeup than usual, most likely to hide her tension. My father simply stared straight ahead, not even looking our way. I wasn't sure if he was ignoring us on purpose or simply couldn't face us. Tiffany joined us at our table and discussed some last-minute arrangements. "Remember, just tell the truth," she urged. Don't let their lawyer rattle you." The judge entered, and everyone stood up. He was an older white guy with thick glasses and a serious demeanor. He described the accusations and the process, but I was so nervous that I barely heard anything. I just kept staring at my parents, wondering how the people who were meant to love me unconditionally could have treated me so cruelly. My mother testified first. She sat on the witness stand, appearing innocent, talking about how she just wanted her girls to have the best possibilities in life. "In our culture, lighter skin opens doors," she explained with a sorrowful smile. "I only wanted them to succeed." Their lawyer questioned whether she ever wanted to harm us. "Of course not," she said, astonished by the thought. "Everything I did was out of love. The product that caused Aurora's reaction was just a new brand we were trying. How could I have known she would be allergic?" When it was Tiffany's turn to question her, things became serious. Tiffany accessed the money records Seraphine had discovered, which revealed years of purchases of illicit skin-bleaching chemicals. "Mrs. Mendez, can you explain why you were importing chemicals that are banned in the United States due to their toxicity?" My mother's face changed. That phony smile faded, and she began tripping over her words. They work better than the American products. Everyone in Honduras uses them. Even though they contain mercury and other toxic substances?" Tiffany asked. "Beauty requires sacrifice," my mother replied, and I swear the entire courtroom fell silent. It was as if she had finally expressed her true beliefs. My father's testimony was not much better. He tried to play the strict but loving father character, saying he only wanted us to have better lives than he did. However, when Tiffany showed him images of my chemical burns and Seraphine's bruises, he was unable to explain them. The worst thing was when their lawyer attempted to portray me as the problem. He brought up instances of me acting out as a teenager, such as going out late and arguing with my parents, all of which are typical of teenagers. He claimed I was making up the abuse because I was rebellious. When it came my turn to testify, he questioned, "Isn't it true that you've always been jealous of your sister's natural beauty?" I nearly laughed. "No," I replied. "I've always been jealous that she was willing to destroy herself to earn our parents' love. And I wasn't." That silenced him for a second. Testifying was more difficult than I anticipated. I had to describe in detail everything they'd done to us over the years, including the sun slaps, skin bleaching treatments, and relentless condemnation of our natural features. With each example, I noticed the judge's demeanor becoming more upset. I burst into tears as I described the Thanksgiving episode. "They held me down and put chemicals on my face that burned off my eyebrows and caused second-degree burns," I told them. "And while I was screaming in pain, they tried to stop my boyfriend from calling an ambulance." The defense claimed I was exaggerating, but hospital records and images supported what I asserted. Seraphine's testimony was much more compelling. She appeared weak and fragile on the stand, with her voice barely above a whisper at first. But as she described what our parents had done, she became stronger. She discussed sleep deprivation, the famine, the ongoing urge to appear whiter, with straighter hair, and less Hispanic. "I thought it was normal," she explained. "I thought all parents treated their children this way. It wasn't until I saw how Laya was healing once she got away that I realized what they were doing to us was wrong." Seraphine explained how our father had gripped her hard enough to leave bruises after discovering the missing financial records, and I noticed my mother wince. Maybe she didn't know about that portion, or maybe she was only concerned about how it appeared to the judge. The trial took 3 days. At the end, I felt emotionally weary. Carlos had taken time off work to be present for every moment, and I don't think I could have done it without him. He brought us snacks during breaks, squeezed my hand when the testimony became difficult, and kept reminding me why we were doing this. On the last day, we heard the closing arguments. The defense attorney attempted to portray our parents as well-meaning immigrants who only wanted their children to assimilate into American culture. Perhaps their methods were misguided, he acknowledged, but their intentions were good. Tiffany's closing point was far more clear. "This case isn't about cultural differences," she told me. "It's about two parents who systematically abused their children, causing physical and psychological harm that will take years to heal. They imported illegal toxic chemicals to use on their daughter's skin and hair. They punished them for their natural appearance. They created an environment where their daughters believed their worth was determined solely by how white they could appear." She displayed the images of my chemical burns again. "This isn't love. This is abuse. Plain and simple." When the judge stated that he was ready to give his verdict, I grabbed Seraphine's hand so tightly that I nearly cut off her circulation. Carlos placed his arm over both of us. In the case of State versus Mendez, the arbitrator said, I find the defendants guilty. On all counts. I broke into tears, not sad tears, but relief tears. Seraphine was also crying, and her entire body shook. Carlos simply embraced us both, his own eyes curiously damp. The judge sentenced our parents to 3 years in prison, with the chance of parole after 18 months and 5 years of probation after their release. They would also have to pay for all of our medical bills and go through forced counseling. A restraining order would stay in place, prohibiting them from contacting us without our express permission. As the bailiff led them away, my mother turned to face us. For a brief moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes. But then she turned away, her back stiff with pride or wrath. I couldn't say which. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Our case appears to have received some local attention due to the unusual nature of the abuse. Tiffany assisted us in getting past them without having to make any statements. We were not prepared to discuss what had transpired in public. That night, we threw a little party at Carlos's apartment. It wasn't fancy, just pizza and ice cream, but it seemed like the most meaningful lunch of my life. Seraphine ate an entire slice of pizza without counting calories or considering how it would influence her appearance. I wore my hair in natural curls and a tank top that revealed my brown complexion. Small triumphs, but they were everything. What happens now? Seraphine inquired as we sat in the living room. Whatever we want, I said, and it felt right for the first time in my life. The following several months were a period of adjustment. After the trial, we had to find out what our new normal looked like. Carlos's apartment was too small for 3 people long-term, so we began looking for a larger space. Seraphine landed a part-time job at an art supply store, which appeared to boost her confidence. I focused on finishing my final semester of university. We both continued our therapy. Some days were more challenging than others. I still had nightmares over the Thanksgiving incident, and Seraphine struggled with her body image and eating habits, but we were making progress. One unexpected bright light was our bond with Aunt Rosa. She came from Miami several times and even offered to support us financially if we needed it. I should have done more when you were children, she said. Let me help now. With her help and our own resources, we found a little 2-bedroom apartment closer to college. Carlos assisted us in moving in, although he maintained his own residence. You two need your space, he remarked, yet he came over so frequently that it felt like he was living with us nonetheless. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from my mother. It had been checked by her jail counselor, who added a note stating that they believed communicating with us was part of her rehabilitation process, but that we were under no obligation to answer. I stared at the envelope for 3 days before opening it. Inside was a single page, written in my mother's clean handwriting. Aurora, it began. I am writing to apologize. The counselor here is assisting me in understanding what I did to you, and Seraphine was mistaken. My grandma raised me the same way, but that's no justification. I hope you forgive me someday, but I understand if you can't. There was more, but it was mostly the same. Apologies interspersed with explanations. That sounded like excuses. I showed it to Seraphine, who silently read it before returning it. Do you believe her? She inquired. I shrugged. I don't know. Maybe she's starting to get it. Maybe she's just saying what her counselor wants to hear. Are you going to write back? I contemplated it for a long time. Not yet, I eventually determined. Maybe someday. But I'm not ready. Seraphine nodded. Me neither. We didn't hear from our father at all. Aunt Rosa, who once visited them in prison, said he was still angry and unrepentant. He blamed me for turning Seraphine against them, destroying their family. I wasn't surprised, but it did hurt. Life continued on. I graduated with a degree in psychology, motivated in part by my personal experiences to assist others struggling with family trauma. Seraphine began attending classes at the community college, focused on art therapy. She remained fragile in certain ways, but she was becoming stronger by the day. Carlos and I became increasingly serious. He proposed on my birthday, almost exactly 1 year after the Thanksgiving episode. Nothing spectacular. Just a straightforward query as we walked through the botanical gardens on campus. I quickly agreed. We opted on an extended engagement to give ourselves time to advance our jobs before marrying. 2 years after the trial, our parents were granted parole. Tiffany contacted to confirm that the restraining order was still in effect and that their parole officer was aware of the situation. That night, I had a panic attack, scared that they would show up at our house regardless of the order. Carlos stayed over and slept on our couch, just to make us feel protected. But they did not arrive. Aunt Rosa said they'd relocated to a different region of the state. My mother had written a few more letters over the years, each one slightly more insightful than the last. I'd eventually written back once, a brief message informing her that I was fine, but not ready for further communication. Seraphine had not answered any of her letters. 3 years after the trial, Carlos and I married in a simple ceremony at a nearby park. Seraphine was my maid of honor, and she looked healthy and beautiful in a dress that complemented her natural skin tone. Aunt Rosa arrived from Miami with other cousins who had supplied statements for our case. Carlos's enormous, boisterous family greeted us warmly, with his mother treating me and Seraphine as if we were daughters she had never had. We did not invite our parents. I considered it, even discussed it with my therapist, but eventually concluded I wasn't ready to visit them in person. Perhaps someday. But not yet. The wedding was all I had hoped for as a child, not because it was elegant or expensive, but because I was surrounded by people who adored me for who I was, not how I appeared. I wore my hair in natural curls, accented with little white flowers. My makeup was minimal, allowing my natural skin tone to show through. The scars from the chemical burns were still evident if you looked closely, but I did not try to conceal them. They were part of my story. Seraphine accepted the bouquet, blushing as Carlos's cousin Ralph quickly invited her to dance. They'd been circling each other for months, both too shy to take a chance. It was good to see her receptive to the prospect of romance. She had been so intent on mending that she hadn't dated since. We left our parents' place. As Carlos and I swung on the dance floor for our first dance, I reflected on the life we had created. It was not ideal. We still had problems and bad days. But it was authentic, honest, and ours. "What are you thinking about?" Carlos inquired, observing my attentive expression. "Just how far we've come," I said. 3 years ago I was in a hospital with chemical burns and Seraphine was starving herself to please our parents. Now look at us. He smiled and spun me gently. "You're the strongest person I know. You know that." I laughed. "I don't feel strong most days." "That's what makes you strong," he explained. "You keep going anyway." Following the wedding, things returned to a familiar pattern. Carlos and I purchased a little house with a yard so I could plant. I enjoyed getting my hands filthy and feeling the sun on my skin without counting down the minutes before punishment. Seraphine moved into her own apartment near the community college, where she was now teaching art classes. She was still in therapy, working on her difficulties with food and body image, but she was thriving in ways I never imagined possible. On the 6th anniversary of the Thanksgiving event, I got another letter from my mother. This one was different from the others. There were no excuses, no attempts to explain away what they'd done, just a simple admission of the pain they'd caused, and a plea. "If you are ever willing, I would love to visit you and Seraphine again. On your terms. In an environment where you feel safe. I understand if the response is no." I showed Seraphine the letter at our monthly sister supper. She read it carefully, her face unreadable. "What do you think?" I inquired. She exhaled. "I don't know. Part of me never wants to see them again. But another part wants closure." "A reckoning?" I proposed. She nodded. "Something like that." We talked about it for weeks, with each other and with our therapists. Eventually, we decided to meet our mother. Just her, not our father. In a public setting, with Carlos nearby for support. We chose a coffee shop near our therapist's office in case we needed a session later. I was so scared the day of the meeting that I couldn't function. Carlos drove us because my hands were shaking excessively. Seraphine was right beside me, her face pallid but resolute. Our mother was already there when we arrived, seated at a corner table with her hands wrapped over a mug. She appeared older, with uncolored gray streaks in her hair. When she noticed us, she rose up but did not approach, honoring the boundaries we had established in our communication. "Thank you for coming," she said, as we sat across from her. Carlos positioned himself at the end of the table, providing a protecting presence without being invasive. Initially, the talk felt awkward. Small chat felt silly considering our past, but jumping right into the serious stuff seemed too abrupt. Finally, our mother took a deep breath and addressed the elephant in the room. "I want you both to know that I understand now how wrong I was," she told them. "The counseling, in prison and after, it helped me see what I did to you, what your father and I did. There's no excuse. Seraphine stared at her coffee. Why did you do it? She inquired, her tone barely audible. Why did you hate how we looked so much? Our mother's eyes flooded with tears. I didn't hate you. I hated myself. My own grandmother did the same to me, and I thought I was helping you avoid the pain I felt. But instead, I caused it. We spoke for about 2 hours. It was not magical or perfect. There were awkward silences and moments when emotions become too intense to continue. But it was honest, in a manner that our family had never been before. Before we left, our mother asked if we'd be willing to meet again sometime. No pressure, she said immediately. And I understand if you don't want to include your father. He's still working through things. Seraphine and I exchanged looks. Maybe, I said. We'll think about it. As we walked back to the car, Carlos inquired about our feelings. Weird, Seraphine said. Like, I'm glad we did it, she remarked. But I also kind of want to go home and cry for hours. Same, I agreed. It's like, I don't know if I can ever fully forgive her, but I think I understand her a little better now. We did meet with our mother again a few months later, and again after that. We slowly and deliberately created a new kind of relationship. Not the tight mother-daughter bond that might have been, but something genuine and respectful. She never asked us to go meet our father, and we never offered. Life continued to move forward. Carlos and I welcomed our first kid, a daughter named Rosa after my aunt, the first family member to believe us. Seraphine became the world's most devoted aunt, showering her niece with handcrafted toys and miniature paintings for her nursery. My mother's first meeting with Rosa was another milestone in our recovery path. I studied Mom carefully as she held my baby, waiting for any indication that she may critique her appearance or engage in the same destructive conduct she did with us. But Mom merely cooed and smiled, assuring Rosa that she was perfect, just the way she is. She is, I replied, taking my kid back. And she always will be. No matter what she looks like. My mother nodded, realizing the meaning behind my remarks. Yes, she replied gently. She will be. Seraphine and Ralph married on the beach 7 years after that terrible Thanksgiving. She wore a sleeveless dress that revealed her natural skin tone, and her hair was in loose curls down her back. She appeared robust, powerful and happy, in stark contrast to the hungry, sleep-deprived youngster she had been when we escaped. During the reception, I had a quiet moment with her away from the festivities. Did you ever think we'd get here? I said, gesturing around at the life we'd created and the family we'd chosen. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Never. I thought I'd spend my whole life trying to disappear. And now I'm trying to take up space, she blurted out. The right kind of space. I hugged her, taking care not to mess up beautiful wedding hair. You're doing a pretty good job of it. As we returned to the party, I noticed Carlos dancing with our now toddler daughter, standing on his feet and moving about the floor. My heart felt so full it could burst. Our journey was not over. We still had scars, visible and invisible. We still had days when the past felt too close, when recollections surprised us and left us reeling. But we had created something that our parents had never given us. Unconditional love. Acceptance of oneself and others. And the freedom to be exactly who we were designed to be. I was dumped by my ex-fiancée just before our wedding. 15 years later, she has returned, filled with scars and regrets, asking for another chance. She simply went without saying anything or leaving a note soon before our big wedding, and I never received an explanation. Her relatives couldn't understand either. She disappeared without a trace, leaving me and everyone else in the dark. Despite the fact that we had spent high school and college together, she didn't come back to me. Her parents had to inform me that she didn't want me around and had no plans to return. I never understood why she did it, but I was forced to honor her demands. Since she stopped communicating with everyone, I could only assume that she suffered a mental breakdown. I've battled the unsolved questions ever since, even though we were both young and still figuring life out. Then she suddenly wants to meet up and DMs me on Facebook. Anger, anxiety, optimism and despair are all over me after all these years. I'm still attracted to her. Her Facebook profile makes me miss her, but I'm not sure if I could bring her back. She is unmarried and even more gorgeous than before. I'm torn. She says it's preferable to talk about it face to face, but she won't elaborate on why she left. All I can infer from her Facebook posts is a great deal of regret, talks about loneliness, feeling weak and leading a shameful existence. It's annoying. I should not have anything to do with her after she abandoned me, but the truth is that I couldn't stop thinking about her. What ought I to do? Should I confront her, ghost her back, or see where we might go with this meeting? TLDR, after more than 15 years, my ex-fiancée DMs me on Facebook and asks to go on a date. She abandoned me prior to our wedding, so I haven't spoken to her since. Important remarks. Wow, OP, that's difficult. It's been 16 years. Would you find closure you never got, or would seeing her set you back after all this time? OP, I'm not sure. All I want is closure. I believed she had cheated on me for a long time, but based on what her family and some friends told me, it appeared to be more of a mental breakdown. She was anxious about finals and her profession, and she was afraid about the wedding. She eventually made a comeback after ghosting everyone, but I was never involved. I've been thinking about her constantly. You should try to get closure by meeting her, but don't go in expecting her to return. You may not feel the same way about her today, but you do feel something for the person you knew. It's a long time to be abandoned like that. 16 years. Her motivations for contacting me after all this time seem dubious to me. Avoid thinking about her too much. OP, what would be her motivation? She wasn't pregnant when she abandoned me, and I don't have any money or children. The disappearance was completely unexpected. She simply disappeared and never returned to school. To be honest, I think something went wrong. Revision. That was something then. At least I had closure. We sat and chatted outside the cafe where we met. Her severely scarred arms and the intense pain imprinted on her face caught my attention right away. In summary, she acknowledged that she had intended to end the relationship long before the wedding but had been too cowardly and weak to advocate for herself. Everything caused her to have a total nervous breakdown. She felt unable to defend herself and was fed up with being forced to do things she didn't want to do. She was upset with her family for forcing her into a degree she didn't desire and for pressuring her to get married and start a family. She also felt angry at herself for lacking the guts to speak up. We both agreed that nothing she did was justified. I put her on the spot when I proposed to her for the first time in public. She wanted to refuse, but she couldn't risk hurting me. She was correct. I made all of her decisions. Back then, I was a very different person. I was self-centered, and she was submissive, just following the crowd without advocating for herself. I frequently muffled her speech, preventing her from developing or becoming her own person. Everything culminated at one point and she suffered a total mental collapse. The only person she ever trusted, her best friend, advised her to flee her issues. She claimed that the only thing she knew how to do was to flee. Her life took a turn for the worse. She didn't say what she had done, but she ended up in prison for a while after being homeless for a few years after being evicted by her best friend's husband. Since her release almost a year ago, she has been making efforts to improve her life. She ultimately got in touch with me, got a job, and reconnected with her parents. We both agreed that there isn't a future for us. We now live far apart and are two different persons who have nothing in common. She doesn't demand forgiveness or justify her actions. She is disgusted and ashamed of what she did. I just forgiven her because I wanted to be furious but couldn't. After saying our goodbyes and shaking hands, it's likely that we won't see each other again. It's heartbreaking. At last, she and I were able to get the closure we sought. A weight seems to have been lifted. I now realize that we will never have a future together. However, I'm also upset because it's really over. It was all for nothing, all these years of hope. Not many people can say that, but in the end this is an ending, and I've finally found closure. Should I trust her story? I do indeed. And is it really important now, even if she is full of it? She has always struck me as being very meek and weak-willed. When things get too tough, she usually just follows everyone's instructions and flees. Because she is too frail to deal with her issues, she avoids them. Her family was the usual tiger parents who deny their troubled child, so I guess it makes sense that they wouldn't tell me anything about her. TLDR, if it ends well, everything is okay. Finally, our relationship is over, and we can both move on. Important remarks. However, her companion ought to have been the one to notice it. Her companion acted as a facilitator. All of us were. The person who urged her to run was her friend. Anything was all up to her, of course. No one made her do anything. However, I might have anticipated it if I hadn't disregarded her issues and had instead been more involved in her life. But it is what it is. Wait a second, OP, where did you find an open cafe? Asterisk. It's partially open. We sat in the parking lot and ordered takeout. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. The proposal shouldn't come as a surprise. You should be fully informed before proceeding. At some point, talk about it as something you both desire. If the other person isn't prepared, dropping it at random puts a lot of pressure on them. In actuality, she was correct. In order to ensure that she wouldn't say no, I purposefully proposed in public. All I could think of was myself. I never thought she was unhappy or that a public proposal may make her uncomfortable. You had a good ending, but she didn't. You seem to have contributed to her issues at the time. Have you shown regret for how you handled her? Did you make amends or provide assistance? To be honest, I felt horrible. Because I just wasn't there for her, I contributed to her anxiety and sorrow. I was prone to taking her for granted. She didn't want to hurt me, so she wanted to end the relationship. She believed that being married to me wouldn't be all that horrible. However, she simply broke. The idea of being in a lie-based, loveless marriage became too much. With a snap, she fled. I did love her, but to be honest, I wouldn't have been so oblivious to her needs if I really loved her. I could have liked the idea of her more than I actually loved her. This is forcing me to examine myself closely. After years of bullying, my sister invited me to dinner. When I arrived, she made me clean up, calling me a pathetic waitress. My parents have never concealed the fact that my sister, Helen, has always been the best child in the family. The youngest of my parents' children, she was considered their miracle child. Despite having serious health issues, my parents had been trying for years to have another child after me. My parents were effectively told to give up on growing their family after my mother experienced problems following my delivery, which prompted physicians to advise against getting pregnant again. But my mother defied all expectations and got pregnant again 5 years later. For my father, who was thrilled about the possibility of having another child, this news was nothing short of a miracle. This position as a miracle baby had a significant impact on my sister's upbringing and the way my parents regarded her. They have always treated her like a queen, going above and beyond to make sure she has the finest of everything. Her unique position within the family was further cemented by the lavish celebration of each of her accomplishments and milestones. It was obvious to everyone, including me, that my sister had a special and elevated place in our parents' affections since this partiality was never covert. Rather, it was publicly expressed and accepted. Not to be misunderstood, my parents also made sure I had all I needed. However, their treatment of me frequently seemed like an afterthought. For example, school functions. My parents would always choose to go to my sister's function if we had activities on the same day. As if my wants and occurrences were somehow less significant, they would explain that she was the youngest and so required them more. My parents still treasure the innumerable childhood photos of my sister that are painstakingly arranged in albums. They haven't even saved one of my albums, on the other hand, saying that my photos were lost in a storm. I would have liked to see how I grew up, therefore I wish they could have at least saved a couple photos. When my early life wasn't kept the same way as my sister's, it's difficult to avoid feeling like an afterthought. When I was growing up, my sister Helen's problems, no matter how minor, were promptly addressed and fixed. However, my father would brush me off and label me spoiled if I ever complained or wanted something. My mother would reprimand me for being more confident like my sister and accuse me of being overly theatrical if I ever felt nervous about trying new things or approaching strangers. I always felt that my sister's worries and emotions were more important than mine because of the way my parents treated me. Then came the game of blame. I was also held accountable for my sister's activities if she ever committed a transgression. My parents say that since I was the eldest, I ought to have taught her to be better. Because of my birth order, I was always held accountable, even if I had nothing to do with her behavior. This unwarranted ongoing blaming made me even more of the underdog and made me live in perpetual shadow of my sister. Helen didn't help either. She was well aware of how to take advantage of her status as the favorite child, and frequently used it to outdo me or get away with things. She would often coerce me into letting her use my possessions or put on my clothes without my consent during even the most minor arguments. She would go to our parents and complain if I ever ventured to object, accusing me of being conceited and self-centered. I would unavoidably receive criticism for not sharing and be made to feel guilty in every circumstance. But Helen's actions were distinctly biased. She was always very protective of her belongings and never let me touch them. We shared a room for a long time, and she aggressively protected her side and possessions. The dynamic remained the same even after we went into different rooms. She was quite particular about her belongings, but she always wanted me to be understanding and giving with mine. It was discouraging and frustrating to experience this double standard. I always felt alone and underappreciated because of Helen's ability to control circumstances to her advantage and my parents' steadfast support of her. They believed Helen could do no wrong, while I was always in the wrong, regardless of what I did. I had severe depression as a result of my parents' and sister's behavior. As a teenager, I experienced severe problems with my self-image and my confidence began to decline. Particularly when Helen would argue with me or make fun of me, the tension was unbearable. I was constantly on edge due to my fear of confrontation, and I frequently felt like I was about to have a panic attack because of my parents' combative yelling. I would feel as though I was choking beneath the weight of their disappointment and rage when they approached too close during their outbursts. My family didn't seem to be aware of or concerned about my difficulties. With no one to turn to for help, I felt like an animal in a cage, caught in a vicious cycle of mental and emotional suffering. Writing down my thoughts in a journal was therefore the only thing that gave me comfort. I would write my heart out on those pages every night, sharing my sorrows, disappointments, and anxieties. It was the only setting where I felt free to be totally open about my situation. It gave me some serenity and allowed me to process the pandemonium around me. Because I was worried that Helen may discover the journal and make fun of my weaknesses, I always kept it hidden beneath my bed. My worst nightmare came true one day. While I was out, Helen, who had a tendency of prying into my room even though I had repeatedly asked her to leave, discovered my journal. My one haven must have been violated when she read through its contents. My parents and Helen were seated in the living room with particularly serious expressions when I got home that evening. Given their solemn looks, I assumed there might have been a death in the family and inquired about their well-being. In order to speak with me, my dad asked me to sit down. As I obeyed, my heart began to race and I had a bad sensation in my stomach. Then, from behind her, my mother took my journal. When I demanded to know what she was doing with my journal, my eyes dilated in amazement and disbelief. While my mother gave me an unusually serious look and inquired as to whether what I had written actually expressed my innermost sentiments, Helen simply grinned, taking pleasure in my pain. I felt completely exposed and deceived at that very moment. My notebook had been my lone haven, where I could vent my suffering and annoyance without worrying about criticism or mockery. My deepest innermost thoughts were now exposed to the very people who inspired me to compose them. I was overcome by the seriousness of the situation, and while I fought to react, I could feel a panic attack coming. Yes, it did reflect my thoughts, I said gently, adding that they had no right to read it. My father shook his head and informed me that they were really worried about me if what I had written was accurate. He went on to add that after reading my journal, they felt that I was a psychopath, who needed assistance because of the hatred they thought I had for them, and I gazed at them in confusion. I was shocked beyond belief. I had never said anything harsh about my sister or my parents in my whole journal. All I had done was write down the feelings and experiences their acts had given me over the years. But here they were, turning my sincere thoughts into something evil. For keeping a notebook, my parents began accusing me of writing such dark things, and even calling me a psychopath. My mother continued by accusing me of making things up to fill the book and saying that neither she nor my father had ever treated me in this manner. I needed serious help, she insisted, before I harmed someone. Helen went so far as to comment that she was ashamed to call me her sister after reading my notebook since my actions were clearly not normal. Retorting that I had done nothing wrong and that I had not written anything negative about them, I attempted to defend myself. I clarified that they had no authority to condemn me based on my personal reflections because the notebook was only about my life. My family, however, was obsessed with their story that something was wrong with me and didn't care about my explanations. In front of them, I felt so vulnerable and exposed. They seemed to have taken away the last remnant of my privacy and turned it against me. The very following day, my parents informed me that I needed serious help before things turned south, and that they would be taking me to see a psychiatrist. It was obvious that they perceived me as the issue because of the disdain and misdirected worry in their statements. I experienced a crippling sense of powerlessness and betrayal. Instead of admitting the pain and harm they had caused, it seemed as though they were intent on making me the issue and changing the course of events. I was deeply hurt by the betrayal, and their reaction made me feel even more alone and powerless than I had already felt. I felt quite uneasy and guilty at first when I started seeing a psychiatrist, as though I had actually done something wrong. I was ashamed to express my thoughts as I had accepted the notion that I was the problem in my family. My psychiatrist recognized my hesitancy and attempted to close the distance by using my notebook. I felt more at ease and was able to open up when she read entries from it and asked me questions based on what I had written. Since it had always been easier for me to express myself on paper than in person, the journal was a useful tool throughout our meetings. But as I was getting married to the love of my life, everything changed. My parents contacted me after learning about my impending nuptials via cousins and other family members. They were obviously shocked to be left out of such a significant event in my life. They made an unexpected call, They reluctantly expressed sorry for their previous actions and acknowledged their wrongdoings. Since I was going to have a family of my own, they acknowledged that even though they couldn't alter the past, they still wanted to make new memories with me. They pleaded with me to pardon them and let them share in this new phase of my life. Their apologies was a surprising turn of events that had me face a variety of feelings. I chose to forgive them and invite my parents to my wedding since I was starting a new chapter in my life. In addition, they asked my sister to come, but I flatly refused, and they didn't pursue the matter. In retrospect, I'm glad I invited my parents, who had a great time at the wedding. The decision seemed natural since they were truly thrilled for my husband and myself. Since then I've tried to occasionally go over to my parents' house for supper in order to catch up. I occasionally have to talk to my sister on these visits. She still attempts to enrage me by making insensitive remarks about my marriage or my family, but I always make sure to confront her conduct head-on and correct her. Helen has only grown more resentful of me over the years, particularly after learning that I get along better with my in-laws than she does with her husband's family. Her in-laws have never truly embraced her into their family and apparently still hate her. She tries to put them down by making subtle remarks about my spouse or my in-laws. She expresses her annoyance and discontent with her personal situation through these comments. Helen keeps making these harsh remarks despite my dad's repeated observations of her behavior and his request for her to cease. I was told I was pregnant 4 months ago. My spouse and I are ecstatic about the news. He makes twice as much as I do, so we agreed that I should take a temporary leave of absence to concentrate on the pregnancy. My spouse and my in-laws, who have been quite sympathetic and supportive along this process, fully back this decision. My sister was incensed when she learned that I had chosen to quit my career in order to stay at home with my unborn child. Because they needed both of their earnings to make ends meet, her husband never permitted her to be a stay-at-home mother, which was the source of her rage. Helen never had the opportunity to unwind or take a break during her pregnancy, unlike me. As a result, whenever we get together, she criticizes my choice to express her displeasure. She has referred to me as foolish, and suggested that being a stay-at-home mom is humiliating. On multiple occasions, I have just laughed off her comments and told her that I had years of experience and could go back to work whenever I chose. Helen, however, has attempted to manipulate the issue by claiming that I should never have given up on my profession and that my husband is being domineering. This strikes me as ironic because I chose to leave my job. I am aware that her attempts to discredit my choice are obviously motivated more by her personal discontent with her life than by any genuine criticism of my decisions. I have made every effort to avoid her in order to preserve my mental health and give my whole attention to enjoying my pregnancy. My sister contacted me a week ago to invite me to a dinner party she was throwing. She wanted my spouse and I to go, and she intended to invite her in-laws and our whole family. I viewed this dinner gathering as a welcome diversion and an opportunity to mingle, as I hadn't gone out much since my pregnancy. I was more motivated to go since I reasoned that my sister would probably pay less attention to me with so many people around. Although I consented to go, things didn't work out that night. My spouse had to work late into the night to finish some last-minute chores. He was already under a lot of stress and he kept apologizing to me for being late to work. I didn't hold it against him because I knew that these things may happen. We were already running late for the dinner party when he finally arrived to pick me up. I thought it was better to be late than not at all, so I chose not to cancel despite the delay. As soon as we got to my sister's house, I saw that most of the people there had already eaten dinner and were chatting casually. My dad doesn't feel comfortable driving at night, so even my parents went after supper. My sister chastised us for being late right away, and although I didn't blame her for being irritated, I took the initiative to apologize on my husband's behalf because he was obviously humiliated by the circumstance. I was relieved when Helen ushered my husband to a chair and brought him a plate of food, but she drew me aside and led me into the kitchen. There she disclosed that there was no food left for me because everyone had already consumed their second or even third helping. This realization surprised me, especially since I was already really hungry and felt even more so because I was pregnant. I was disappointed, but I decided not to dispute or voice my displeasure. I told her that I could just order something online because I knew that our tardiness had caused this trouble. I could still eat in this manner without creating any more trouble. It was nice of her to nod and offer to order me something. However, she informed me that the least I could do tonight was wash the dishes because I had arrived so late and hadn't contributed much during the evening. I was surprised when she asked. I sneered and informed her that I hadn't anticipated being asked to work for her just because I was late for the dinner party invitation. Because I was late, I thought it was ridiculous to expect me to clear her visitors' plates. She reacted quickly and angrily. As her sister, I should be helping her, especially since she's been cooking so much all day, she shot out in a low, angry tone. She said that as my mother had assisted her in serving the guests at dinner, I should do the same because I was related. Helen made it clear that she wanted my assistance because her husband was never helpful in the kitchen. I countered that Helen shouldn't have invited so many people if she was feeling overburdened. She responded angrily and contemptuously, telling me that the least I could do was to keep quiet and provide her a hand because I would never be able to comprehend her predicament. In a scathing comment, she went on to say that it wasn't a huge problem if I assisted her as well because, now that I was pregnant, I was just a pathetic waitress for my husband at home. Her scathing remarks caught me off guard and were really painful. The weight of her remarks caused tears to build up in my eyes, adding to my already present feelings of hunger and emotional vulnerability. I hurried into one of Helen's bedrooms and closed the door behind me because I didn't want her to see me in distress. I had to locate a place where I could gather myself. Once inside, the usual feeling of being unable to breathe was overwhelming, and I could feel my old panic attack beginning to re-emerge. I fervently prayed that no one, including my spouse, would notice my misery and pursue me. I needed this alone time to get some peace and regain emotional control. After calming down and giving it some thought, I believed that Helen deserved to be disciplined once and for all because of her constant remarks and the way she continued to treat me. I made the decision to act against her. Finding all the pictures I had taken of my old journals was the first thing I did. I took my journal with me when I left my parents' house, and throughout the years, I began to save pictures of the journal entries in my email so I would always have a copy. I was able to locate pictures of my old journal entries, which described all the humiliations and complaints I had suffered at the hands of my sister years ago, thanks to this. Since my sister was only terrified of my brother-in-law, I decided to send him all the pictures before my husband and I departed that evening. I was aware that my parents would just chastise her for her behavior toward me, but she would never, ever change. I wanted Helen to go through a small portion of the humiliation that her husband rightfully inflicted upon her. I sent him a thorough letter outlining how Helen had been a major bully in my life. Helen had asked me to the dinner party, but I had to clean up after her and the other guests, I wrote in the message. I explained that she seemed to be jealous of my more thoughtful husband, which is why she was upset with me. In the hopes that he might better understand or take action, I tried to give him a clear picture of Helen's behavior and how it had affected me. Bill and Helen got into a heated argument as a result, as you may guess. Bill told our parents that he now saw Helen differently since he couldn't believe she had been harassing me for years. My dad has chosen to be a little more neutral, but my mother fully blames me for their argument since she feels that I went too far by exposing my sister. I have no regrets about letting my sister see her spouse. Update 1. For those who are curious, after learning what my sister said to me at the party, my husband is just as furious with her. He didn't know, but when I told him everything, he called my sister to vent his annoyance and correct her. I've never witnessed him so agitated, and Helen must have been really unsettled by his response. Additionally, he has made it very apparent to her that she should stop talking about our family going forward, especially since she is unaware of the whole truth. Update 2. My brother-in-law is furious with Helen since his own family has always thought she is egotistical and careless. Throughout their entire marriage, Helen had a tendency to place the blame for any argument or quarrel on everyone but herself. Because he loves her, Bill has been lenient toward her for a long time. But it was really eye-opening for him when I showed him my journal entries. He had never known our complex past, but he had always sensed that Helen and I were not particularly close. He had only witnessed a superficial aspect of our relationship and was ignorant of the seriousness of the problems that had existed between us because Helen had conveniently never told him the truth. His perception of my sister was drastically changed after hearing my side of the tale, which at last filled in a lot of the blanks. It demonstrated even more how accurate his family's assessment of Helen was. Bill told me all of this when he contacted me this week. He also wanted to hear it all straight from my point of view. We had a lengthy phone discussion, and I was more than happy to talk. I described all the hardships I'd gone through as a child, highlighting the way my parents had always given preference to my sister. Before I nearly cut them off after leaving for college, I told my parents how my psychiatrist had attempted to address these problems with them, but they had never admitted their mistakes. My brother-in-law also talked candidly about his own interactions with Helen throughout our talk. He described how she would occasionally treat him similarly, but he had always dismissed it as just her being herself. Even though he was aware of his own shortcomings in their relationship, he was shocked to learn about the ways she had harassed me over the years, even as an adult. It has truly caused him to reconsider their relationship as a whole. Helen may be acting harshly toward their child behind his back, which worries him as well. Update 3. For the final time, I'm answering some of your questions. After the party, my sister wrote me a number of angry texts and, of course, blamed me for everything. My husband had to step in and stop her. She hasn't contacted me or spoken to me since. Second, my mom has insisted that I inform Bill that I over-exaggerated the events from my early years and apologize. I adamantly declined, stating that my husband and I would cut her off if she persisted in endorsing my sister's position. But my father knows why I did what I did. Finally, I'm not sure what Bill will decide about his connection with Helen. My ultimate objective was to expose my sister and show her that she couldn't continue to get away with disparaging me. I have absolutely no regrets about what I did. Bill is now entirely responsible for determining what is best for his future. My brother secretly had a crush on my wife and even brought my ex to our wedding to ruin it, so I told his pregnant girlfriend he was cheating on her. Please be patient as this will be a lengthy read. My younger brother, Jake, false name, is 25 years old and I am 27. As siblings, Jake and I have always been close, and I assumed our connection was quite typical. Perhaps I didn't realize what was happening. Or perhaps he was really skilled at concealing his actual feelings. My now wife Zara, 24F, and my ex-girlfriend Ruth, 27F, are also included in this story. Zara, Jake and I all attended the same school. I never really interacted with Zara because I was a few years older than them. I was acquainted with Jake and all of his pals, and we occasionally played together, but that was our only connection. Because our interests were so dissimilar, Jake and I began to drift apart by the time I was in my junior year. I didn't really push for a tight relationship with him because I assumed this was a normal part of growing up. We continued to get out from time to time, but we didn't exchange secrets. Boys don't really do that, so I wasn't too bothered by it either. The only significant aspect of this narrative is that Jake was hanging out with a few of his friends and their girlfriends, including Zara, just before I left for college. I want to clarify that nothing improper occurred before anyone calls me a weirdo or groomer for pursuing a 15-year-old. One of the children I met there inquired about my college location. Zara added that it was her ideal university when I told them, and I just said that she was more than welcome to ask for my assistance when she applied. That was it. She was the only person I interacted with at school. After that, I left for college and completely forgot about that little encounter because it didn't matter. I met Ruth in college. We clicked right away when we were classmates. I finally asked her out in my third year of college, though it took some time. We began dating after she said yes. Everything was wonderful in the beginning of the relationship. I felt like I truly understood her because we were going through comparable struggles and wished to live similar lives with one another. After graduating from college, I was able to secure a lucrative position, but Ruth was not as fortunate. We agreed to live together in order to save money, and I was more than happy to assist her. She was applying for jobs all over the place, but for some reason, she was never hired, even after she reached the interview stage. Even though I made enough money to support the two of us, it was still hard to save much because I was still in the early stages of my work, and I knew this was having a negative psychological impact on her. For more than a year, she continued to apply to various locations without success. She was devastated, and I did my best to be there for her. But shortly after, she realized that we could make ends meet with just my paycheck, so she gave up completely. At first, I welcomed the shift because I assumed she was simply worn out from applying and being turned down and that it was having a negative psychological impact on her. She followed my advice to take some time off and engage in enjoyable activities. For 3 or 4 months, this continued. She stopped complaining as much, became happier, experienced less stress, and her mental health significantly improved. I felt pleased for her. In the next few weeks, I hoped to gently encourage her to resume her job search. When I brought up the subject a month later, she reacted negatively, claiming that the thought of going through that terrifying experience once more made her cry. She said she would begin applying when she was ready and asked me not to bring it up again. I accepted since I believed her and didn't want to put undue pressure on her or come out as unsupportive. I was promoted and given a sizable raise 2 years after I started working. Now that I could at last start saving and doing the things I loved, I was ecstatic. I've had to put a lot of my aspirations on hold for the past 2 years in order to provide for 2 people with my paycheck. Naturally, Ruth's mental health issues and my personal interests took a backseat. Now that I had some money to spend on fun, I felt relaxed. However, Ruth began pleading with me to assist in paying for her niece's schooling as soon as she learned that I had been given a raise. Ruth's brother was impoverished and could only work for a few months at a time. He had gotten a lady pregnant and was clueless about how to raise a child, particularly after the woman died and left no family behind. Ruth's brother, who was completely unprepared to care for another human being, took the infant. Ruth pleaded with me, saying that even though she had only met her niece twice, she loved her and would never be able to forgive herself if she couldn't assist her. All of this was getting to be too much for me, so I told her I would give it some thought and ended the conversation. There was a part of me that honestly considered giving her the money, but there was also a nastier part of me that believed it was her niece and that she could get up and get work to support her. That night, I drank a lot, and as I continued to drink, all the logic and reason I had suppressed came flooding back. Since I was in love with Ruth, I never really gave the suspicion that she was attempting to take advantage of me any thought. I was unable to get rid of those emotions though. I was pleased to support her throughout her life, but it seemed excessive to ask me to support her niece as soon as I received a raise, especially at the expense of my own desires. Since I would be stuck in this situation for the rest of my life if I started supporting the niece now, I knew it was time to stand up for myself. I sat Ruth down the following day and informed her that, regardless of how regrettable the situation, I would not be providing financial support for her niece. Additionally, I told her that she was free to take a job and assist the poor child if she felt sorry for her. I didn't care what she did with the money. I refused to listen to her attempt to butt in, claiming that I was being unkind and that a poor youngster needed my assistance. I also informed her that the distribution of domestic duties would shift if she failed to find employment. If she wasn't making a financial contribution, I expected her to do 80% of the tasks because we didn't have any children or pets. I informed her that I wanted a vacation after working tirelessly for the past 2 years to support her while balancing work and home. She needed to help relieve some of my financial burden if she wasn't prepared to aid me financially so that I could have more money for myself. It would be an understatement to say that she began to yell. It was a miracle I didn't leave the conversation with my ears bleeding because I don't think I've ever had the bad experience of listening to such high decibels before. She called me every possible epithet during her lengthy tirade, including misogynistic, manipulative, gaslighting, and financially abusive. I simply needed a break though. If she couldn't do this for me, why were we even partners? The altercation continued for a while. She probably thought that because I've never been confrontational, I would give in. I didn't, which surprised her. For several more days we were at a standstill. She cut me off once more when I attempted to bring up the subject. I realized we were done at that point. I was merely supporting her life and receiving nothing in return, therefore there was no future for me in this relationship. It was a messy split. Because she was unemployed, she had nowhere to go. I informed her that I was done with her and that she should have her problems straightened out by then, but I was willing to give her some money to help her get by for a month or two. She broke down in tears, accusing me of faking and performing the whole drama act. I informed her that my decision was final and that I was no longer interested in this relationship. It could not be saved, and all the solutions she was now offering ought to have been presented to her while we were still together, not as a last resort. The split was nonetheless unpleasant even though I had set her up for a few months. I didn't understand how much dead weight I'd been carrying until she walked out. I could spend so much time and effort on myself. I resumed interests I had given up while in school. These pastimes allowed me to get back in touch with Zara. Zara chose to pursue painting as a career despite not attending my college. Even though it was somewhat of a covert pastime because it wasn't deemed masculine enough, I had always loved doodling as a child. I went since I was curious about the art show in my city. I discovered Zara there. We started chatting after she displayed a piece in the exhibition. I had broken up with Ruth a few months prior to this. When I asked Zara how things were doing, we struck up a conversation that we both found enjoyable. We agreed to get together once more, and she said she would notify me of any upcoming art events in the area. She did. After we reconnected, we gradually began to fall in love. I was already deeply in love with her when I finally asked her out a year later. When I tried to ask Jake about her, he told me that they hadn't spoken since she broke up with the guy from his school friend group. I won't go into all the specifics of my relationship with Zara because they aren't pertinent to this tale, but know that we have always been friendly and equal partners, and I knew she was the person I wanted to marry from a young age. Ruth made a few attempts to contact me during this time, but I always turned her down. Zara knew this every time it occurred, and she was confident enough to trust me. A year into our relationship, Zara and I were already considering marriage when I took her to supper with my family. That has never been a problem because my parents don't meddle in their children's private matters. Zara and my family got along well, and the supper was enjoyable. We were all discussing how amusing it was that life operates in weird ways and how my run-in with Zara again was entirely coincidental. At that point, Jake joked that he was shocked that his high school infatuation would end up becoming his sister-in-law. All those in attendance interpreted it as a light-hearted joke at the moment. Zara even claimed that the only person in their group who was even remotely engaging to converse with was Jake. I didn't give Jake's remark any thought, and the dinner was enjoyable. He also appeared to be really pleased with me. Even though he had been in several relationships, I had no idea that he had been harboring affections for Zara all these years. The problems began when the wedding was being planned. At the time, I didn't see it coming since I never imagined my own brother would do something like this. At first, it was minor infractions that might be explained by his general forgetfulness, such as failing to check in with the caterer or misjudging the time of the dress appointment. I now see that he purposefully caused a wedge between Zara and me in order to somehow call off the wedding. It didn't work. Even though we were both under a lot of stress, we were too resilient to be shaken by a few missed appointments. If anything, Zara's snippiness and short fuse with Jake simply made him feel worse. The wedding day was the last straw. Ruth and I hadn't communicated all this time. To be honest, I had no idea where she was, what she was doing, or how she was doing, and I had no interest in her. I had no idea that Jake had been communicating with her for months before the wedding. If nothing else worked, he intended to get Ruth to convince or pressure me into leaving Zara. He was hoping for some sort of intervention, like drama. Despite not being on the guest list, she arrived as Jake's companion. I was taken aback by this since we expected Jake's girlfriend to be present and everyone in the family had met her. I had a horrible feeling, but I didn't have time to ask him why Ruth was there. Fortunately, Ruth had not yet caught Zara's attention. Ruth got up and began yelling in front of everyone just before Zara was set to go down the aisle. She said that she was the love of my life, that she was willing to take me back, and that I didn't have to marry Zara. There was such a ruckus that Ruth began to weep and beat her feet like a spoiled kid. In all honesty, it was pitiful. Taking Jake by the collar, I rushed over to him and yelled at him to get out. He claimed that Zara and he were destined to be together and that Ruth and I were meant to be together, and that he had come to put things right. I was horrified by the ridiculous rubbish he continued to spew. I requested that my pals take him and Ruth out of there. Zara came out at this moment and I'm not even sure if she understood what was going on, but she strolled calmly over to Ruth, blew her a kiss, slapped her in front of everyone and requested her bridesmaids to start the music. Never in my life have I witnessed anything so legendary. Ruth found it really humiliating, and rather than causing a controversy around me, she simply made a show of herself in front of everyone. Given the situation, the remainder of the wedding proceeded as smoothly as possible. I didn't hope for such a dramatic day, but there wasn't much I could do to change the course of events at that point. Immediately following the wedding, I blocked Jake. He had shown me plenty, and I had little interest in hearing his version of events. The fact that Zara and Jake had never even truly bonded made it all the more reprehensible and nasty. To be honest, he was dangerous to be around and possessed delusions. Above everything, I felt terrible for Violet, his lover. I called Violet a few days after the wedding to find out why she didn't go and why Jake didn't invite her as a guest. Before I chose to interfere in their relationship, I needed to know what type of story he had been telling her. She told me bluntly that I didn't have to act like I liked her and that she would much rather I just be honest with her. I quickly realized that Jake had prevented Zara from attending the wedding by using either Zara or me as an excuse. She urged me to stop acting when I questioned her about it, stating that Jake had already informed her that she wasn't invited, which is why he didn't receive a guest at the wedding. She claimed that she didn't mind him leaving or that we didn't like her, but she was really offended by the fact that the whole family acted as though they liked her when we actually didn't. I firmly informed her that Jake had deceived her and that none of that was real. I pleaded with her to keep our talk private from Jake and our parents for the next 2 weeks, and that Zara and I would meet her when we got back from our honeymoon. I had to provide her a picture of the invitation that was sent to Jake, which obviously contained a +1, because she claimed she wouldn't betray Jake on our behalf. I also validated her attendance with Jake by sending her screenshots of our chats. She claimed not to believe us, so I told her that I understood and that we weren't requesting her trust, but rather that she should remain silent until we could meet and address the misunderstanding. She consented, but I wasn't sure if she would follow through on it. I was eager to expose Violet Jake's true nature, but I could only hope that everything would go smoothly during my honeymoon. Update 1. I had no idea this story would become so well known. As I mentioned, I went on my honeymoon and didn't care to check Reddit, but my inbox is overflowing with requests for updates. Thankfully, nothing untoward occurred during the actual honeymoon. Jake didn't try to phone me, and he was still blocked. Violet texted Jake briefly to let him know that she hadn't discussed our chat and that she wanted to meet as soon as I got back from my honeymoon. A few hours had passed since the meeting. Violet didn't feel safe visiting our house, so we met at a cafe. At first, she was really protective and it was obvious from her demeanor and body language that she didn't want to hear what we had to say. However, we thoroughly explained everything to her. She first didn't believe us and called us crazy for making such a false accusation against Jake. I did, however, ask some acquaintances if they had any wedding films while we were on our vacation. Although there wasn't a single video that showed the full experience, other people were filming, so we were able to piece the incident together in general. After showing Violet those movies, I gave her the rundown on Ruth's entire predicament. At that point, she began to trust us. When she inquired about any past interactions between her and Jake, Zara adamantly denied it. It was difficult for Violet to accept that Jake would be so naive about everything, particularly if nothing was happening. Zara claimed to be equally perplexed. She didn't know how or when Jake fell in love with her, and she thought that she had fallen for him. They had only interacted for 10 or 12 times at most. We informed Violet that we believed it was our responsibility to notify her of the situation and that she might use the information however she saw fit. Additionally, we informed her that we had blocked Jake and would no longer be communicating with him, and we didn't anticipate this changing in the near future. She acknowledged that she could see our point of view, but she also stated that she wanted to speak with Jake right away. We made an effort to talk her out of it, but she felt that she owed it to herself to know if staying with Jake was wise, especially since she was pregnant. Zara and I both congratulated her on her pregnancy and assured her that we would always be there for her. Violet stated that although she was certain she wanted to move forward with the confrontation, she would have to reveal that we had contacted her and told her everything. Zara and I understood that supporting Violet was the correct thing to do, even though it wasn't ideal because we both wanted to avoid getting involved in Jake's turmoil. We assured her that she had our undivided attention and that we would stop at nothing to support her. I am aware that this is not the end, but that was the only thing that transpired during the meeting. For Jake, everything is about to explode up, and he has no idea what's going to happen. Update 2. Although I am aware that this update will be released shortly, this situation has gotten out of hand. I hate accidentally starting this storm, and Jake is going to take a serious hit. Violet wasted no time in getting right to the point after speaking with us. She asked Jake if he was at work when she called him. She stormed over to his office at that precise moment and confronted him after he said yes. It became ugly. She asked if he had done the things we had told her about and walked right into his office, which she was given permission to enter because she had told them she was dropping off some files for him. Violet wouldn't have it when Jake tried to explain that it wasn't the right place to talk and that they would talk about it when he got home. HR had to be summoned up to his floor because there was a good deal of shouting going on. This is where Jake's situation becomes even better. Or worse. Violet identified herself as Jake's girlfriend and revealed that she was pregnant when the HR assistant asked her who she was and why she was making such a fuss. She was shocked when Jake denied it. He categorically denied dating her. More shouting followed, and Violet was finally led away. That day a storm awaited Jake as he returned home. I don't know the specifics, but they got into a huge fight. I do know that it was discovered that Jake had been having an affair with Violet for a considerable amount of time, and that the lady he was having an affair with was the HR assistant who had stepped in to break the news. Jake is therefore doomed. Violet is a no-nonsense woman who doesn't put up with disrespect, therefore I'm positive that she will leave him. It is nearly impossible for her to forgive Jake and condone cheating. Jake's workplace has an extremely stringent no-dating policy about his affair partner. Employees are forced to sign contracts and other documents. His affair partner, let's call her Jane, found out that Jake had been pretending to be a single man and that he had a pregnant girlfriend after the altercation and Violet's tirade at work. When Jane discovered that Jake had been lying to her the entire time and that she was the other lady, she was horrified. Word spread quickly, and Jake is currently facing criticism at work for his actions. Jake is in a lot of trouble because Jane has ties to the company's executives, which makes things worse for him. He will undoubtedly lose Violet, and he may lose his job. Jake has nowhere to go because Violet has also evicted him from the house, which turns out to have been Violet's grandmother's. In the middle of the night, Jake came to see us and gave me an explanation of everything. For some reason, I let him in. Never in my life have I witnessed him so enraged. He would not stop yelling that Zara would one day leave me for him, that I had destroyed his life, and that I never deserved someone like her. I was genuinely concerned for his mental health because of how insane he sounded. He requires assistance, possibly from a psychiatrist or a therapist. Jake also became aggressive with me. I'm aware that I'll be called a fool for not calling the police on him, but ultimately, he's my brother, and I didn't want to add to his troubles. More than anything, I felt sorry for him. It's incomprehensible how one foolish choice can ruin someone's life. He had it all, a fantastic profession, a devoted and caring fiancé, and now a baby on the way, but he blew it all away with a series of foolish choices while living in a bubble of bizarre illusions. Right now, I simply feel bad for him. Update 3. Jake was laid off. Even while this is not shocking, I still feel horrible. Violet no longer wants to interact with him after their breakup. Violet has the full support of Zara, me, and my parents. Jake now believes that because of a harmless prank, I have alienated the entire family. Yes, He is now claiming that his pledge of unwavering love was a hoax. He has been totally shunned by the family, and no one is believing this new story of his. This drama has been annoying me. And I'm not sure where he's residing at the moment. As a recent bride, I can't keep rushing around cleaning up Jake's mess. I'm happy that I brought Violet into this in the first place, but I never imagined things would get so out of control. I don't see how Jake can get over this. It's a complete mess. I don't blame my parents for being upset with him because he threw everything away and was essentially a jerk. I don't know how he came to be this way. We weren't brought up this way. This will be my final update though. Zara and I have come to the conclusion that we must move on from this. Violet and our niece or nephew will always have a home with us and we will support them in any manner they require. We're done though, other than that. I appreciate all of the advice, Reddit. I never imagined that I would have my own dysfunctional story to tell, but that is what it is. My boyfriend's intense relationship with his childhood teddy bear is making me uncomfortable. Am I overreacting, or should I be worried? Original post. Okay now, please no joke, this is actually serious. Also, this is a throwaway account and I was an idiot when writing my name and typed throwaway instead of throwra. I have been with my boyfriend for 3 months now, so it's pretty new. So far everything is going well except this tiny little detail. He has this teddy bear, let's name him Teddy. Teddy has always been a part of my boyfriend's life. He got him for his birth and when at around the age of 5 or 6, or whatever age is the appropriate age to remove a teddy bear from a child, his parents tried taking Teddy away from him. He screamed and cried so loud without stopping they ended up giving up. So he kept Teddy with him his whole life. He mentioned Teddy to me pretty early, about a week after us being together. He showed me pictures of him and I found it cute at first. He had plenty of pictures of him in different situations, him with a mug, him laying in bed, him studying. I truly found it adorable since I thought it was just a joke really and didn't think that Teddy was such a big part of his life. The more we got to know each other the more he started mentioning him. He'd often make jokes about him. When he had to come back to his flat, he'd say, "I have to come back, Teddy is waiting for me." And then later he'd text me, "Okay, I put Teddy to bed so now I might go to sleep as well, I don't want to wake him up." Again, a little weird but cute still. But he really started talking about him constantly, always linking what we were doing to him. Oh, I wish Teddy was with us to see that. Teddy doesn't really like people so I won't take him with me for this party, etc. He'd send me selfies with him at least twice a week. He also sometimes said weird stuff like whenever we watched a sex scene in a movie he'd say that's what me and Teddy do when we're alone. Or when I asked when he lost his virginity he answered, "Oh, I lost it with Teddy a few years ago." They were jokes that made me uncomfortable. He always seems to consider him as a baby, his son, his brother, so him being sexualized was extremely weird for me. I told him then that it was weird and he just laughed but I don't think he took me seriously. About a month ago I told him I was okay with him bringing Teddy when he was staying around my flat. I could see it was making him sad to leave him, and also was very curious to finally see him in person. I can't go to my boyfriend's flat, there are rules that are strict, he can't invite anyone. So that day I drove to his flat and he went with all his stuff and Teddy. When he got in the car he pulled him out from his bag and had him give me a kiss on the cheek. When we drove, he opened the window and put Teddy out of the car, a bit like a dog would. He said it was rare for Teddy to travel like that and he could feel that he was happy. Teddy smells a lot, my boyfriend hasn't washed him in 12 years. For the rest of the car drive, he hugged him and gave him kisses. He has a weird twitch, where he just compulsively pats the back of Teddy. It makes a weird sound because Teddy used to be able to play music when you pressed his belly. He always rubs Teddy's clothes in between his fingers. You can guess that Teddy is in a pretty bad state. He used to be red and now he's just gray. When we're together in bed, he always puts Teddy's mouth on my mouth and I always avoid it as I find it disgusting, and I told him that I hate it but he doesn't listen. He always tries to have Teddy touch my boobs or my arse. When we make love, I often end up finding him in between us and every time I throw him away my BF says oh no he likes to watch. In a joking way. He often mentions us having a threesome with Teddy, him, Teddy, being great at licking. And them always doing kinky stuff together. Now I'm not an idiot. I know communication is important. I tried talking to him so many times. Sometimes in a joking way too so he doesn't feel attacked. Like once, I asked who would he choose if he had to choose between me and Teddy, he said Teddy. But also so many times in a serious way, I told him I didn't like when he was rubbing Teddy on my face and body, I told him I found his relationship with him way too intense and weird. But every time he didn't take it seriously, made jokes, and never truly told me what he thought. I should mention that he is like that for any serious conversation, All he does is make awkward jokes and he never tells me how he feels. He said I love you first because he was drunk. This is becoming hard to handle. I have been away from him for 2 weeks and was kind of relieved I wouldn't see Teddy anymore, but all he did was send pictures. And whenever I asked him what are you doing, or what did you do today, his answer was playing with Teddy. Today he told me I was perfect, which was a first and I sure didn't expect that. He doesn't give a lot of compliments. When he said that I said really? And his reply was, actually no, Teddy is perfect, you come way after him. I just gave up and didn't reply. I have 3 questions. 1. Am I overreacting? Am I the one not being tolerant enough? Am I some boring girlfriend who can't welcome some childishness in her couple? 2. What should I do? Should I let him live his life with Teddy? Should I ask him to make a real choice? Should I ask him to just stop the sexual jokes? Like, who am I to ask such things I don't know? Is it my place to tell him to stop being so weird with his teddy bear? And 3. How do I get him to finally talk to me and take me seriously? TLDR, my BF has a weird relationship with his teddy bear. He considers him as a baby, a son, but still makes very sexual jokes about him, often involving me by having him touch my body, and it's making me uncomfortable. What can I do? Update. I did not expect to get that many replies. I woke up to a crazy amount of messages, so thank you all so much. Now you all really scared me as fuck. I need to see him today, so I will tell you how it went. I'm not sure what to do yet, but I'll definitely have a serious talk with him. I'll try. And then depending on his answer I'll either give him a chance or say goodbye. Top comments. Chip _ man 5674 how on earth am I still single Bapadius? Cause you don't have a kick-ass wingman like Teddy, who's willing to do 3 ways and shit. 4 _am _ I bet Teddy looks radiant under a strong black light. But seriously. What the fuck? I've been married for a couple years, and as an average-looking woman I ran into my fair share of weird dudes while dating. But what? If I had told my girlfriends even a light version of this dude's behavior, they would be holding an intervention for me to get away from him ASAP. Even if this was only a strange, immature coping mechanism, it's still not acceptable. The fact that he has strongly implied that he uses Teddy as a masturbation aid. What? I love my husband, but if he started carting around a pocket pussy and made me kiss it, touch it without my consent? If women like OP exist who are willing to put up with shit like this, barring you being some kind of Ted Bundy weirdo, I also have no idea why you're single. Golden Mummies * Teddy Bundy abortion lasagna. So, I'm pretty sure I used to be friends with this dude on Facebook and ended up blocking him. He had several profiles, one for Teddy, and would harass the hell out of women then blame it on Teddy. He told one of my friends he hopes she gets raped, and then blamed it on Teddy and tried to re-add her on a different account. He has a comic novel or something he's working on about him and Teddy, and he makes the girls who block him or get upset with him the villains they defeat. If it's the same dude, he's out of his fucking mind and you need to run. Edit. I didn't want to unblock the guy's profiles, because I have to wait 48 hours to block him again and he scares me, but I found one of his many profiles that seems to be abandoned. He uses an alias, so I don't know if OP would recognize the name. However, his profile is full of photos of the creepy old bear, so maybe she'll recognize the bear. This is Teddy. I certainly hope there's not 2 of these creepazoids running around. This particular dude has a crime scene photo of a dead rape victim laying face down in a field as his cover photo, so if it's the same dude she needs to bail, change her phone number and move. Edit 2, thanks, got the gold and silver. The thread is locked now, so I can't reply to anyone, but OP confirmed this is not Teddy. Update. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to you all. I did not expect to get that many comments. I'm safe for those who are worried. You all really scared me though. I had many questions that were asked, so I'm quickly going to reply to the ones I saw the most often. Why are you with this guy? Are you insecure? Why are your standards so low? Etc. I obviously didn't write down his nicest description. Apart from this weird teddy bear fetish, he was a completely normal guy, with friends, going to parties, studying and so on. He's quite the popular guy, in fact, even though I don't care about this kind of thing. He took me on dates and made me feel special. I really thought he was a keeper. At the beginning, him being a little childish didn't bother me. I myself have stuffed pets, and even though they're in the cupboard, I used to love them as a kid. That's when he started sexualizing his bear and involving me in it that I freaked out. The problem is, it's so hard to tell when he's joking or not. He constantly makes jokes. That's why I never could tell whether I was overreacting or not. Is he just joking or does he mean what he says? However, the one thing I really didn't see coming, and you guys helped me realize it, is his lack of respect towards me and my boundaries. Sometimes it's easier to see from an external point of view. This whole time I was too focused wondering whether it was normal or not for me to feel uncomfortable, and I didn't realize that not once did he help me feel more comfortable despite me telling him how I felt. Thank you a lot, because that's the one thing you all really helped me for. I would have probably taken more time to realize it on my own, even though it now looks obvious. About the guy who said he knew him, abortion lasagna. Unfortunately it wasn't him. Thank you so much for your help though. Run away, he's going to kill you. He's a psychopath, etc. Although his behavior is extremely weird, I don't see him hurting anyone. But obviously it's easier for me to tell since you all had to base your opinion on what I said. He doesn't match the psychopath personality at all. I'm not allowed to visit him because he lives in a private home. A person hosts him in one of their bedrooms, and this person doesn't allow any visit. It is weirdly strict, yes, but it's believable, and I've seen his sister once who confirmed that she couldn't visit him herself. One thing is sure though, although he may not hurt anyone, he seems to have serious problems and I'm not sure I can handle it. It's fake, it looks like the movie Ted. I know it all looks surreal, but it is true. I have multiple pictures of Teddy if some of you are interested. I know a lot about Teddy's past because my BF won't shut up about him. That's why I know the movie Ted, but I have never seen it, and my BF actually suggested that we could watch it like a month ago. Burn Teddy. Make him disappear, etc. Haha, thank you, I did think about it a lot. I often hide him when he brings him in my flat, so I know exactly where he is, and so my BF doesn't think about him. He always ends up looking for him though. But still, it gives me a break. What did you do in the end? I was meant to see him today, so I picked him up and we drove to my flat. Of course Teddy was there, and when he came in the car, my BF had him give me kisses and stuff. I said stop please in a cold way and he stopped. I said we needed to talk and he listened because I started crying. I thought it would be hard for me to start talking, but since I was so stressed with all your comments I just broke down and cried. I told him how I needed him to stop with Teddy, that he needed to stop being so close and dependent on him, that Teddy shouldn't come to my flat anymore. At first he was silent, but then he said he didn't understand why I was so uncomfortable with it, that he was purely joking. That he knew Teddy wasn't real and that it was hurting him to see that I thought he had a problem. I was extremely disappointed by his reaction and just told him I needed a break. I drove him back to his flat, and that's where I am now. Edit. Everyone is saying the post is deleted and I have no idea why. It wasn't deleted before. The original post is available in the comments, it's quite easy to find. Thank you to you all for your support. I realized there was a confusion. No, I'm not in his flat. I'm home and safe. Tonight I'll sleep at a friend so she and I can talk about it, and I'm never going back with him. He sent me terrible messages all night which convinced me to never get back with him. Thank you again for helping me and have a nice day. I'll send a picture of Teddy for those who want one in a bit, but I have to get ready for school first. Don't worry, the face of my BF won't be shown. Top comments, Ursula Verne. It was hurting him to see that I thought he had a problem. Even if he was joking sometimes, he most certainly does still have a problem given all the stuff he was doing. He's trying to normalize his behavior. It isn't normal. He needs therapy. I'm glad to see you're taking a break and that you're alright, OP. Thanks for the update. Prithian on seriously. This dude had an ex-girlfriend who didn't like Teddy, and it was implied this was one of the reasons they were no longer together. Brought Teddy everywhere. Repeatedly forced sexual interactions with Teddy on the OP. Wes wouldn't wash or in any way maintain Teddy in a sanitary condition. When OP vocalized her discomfort, would joke it away and continue the behavior. And is so sad that OP thinks he has a problem. What? The F***CK. He clearly has at least one problem. Depending on how much we believe he believes Teddy is real determines what problem that might be. But there's at least one in every possible interpretation of this scenario. ETA, the more I think about this, the more I think him truly believing Teddy is real in some sense is actually the less disturbing problem. Am I the asshole for ending my engagement after my fiancée kept her best friend in the dark about us? Original post, my now ex-fiancée, 30F, and me, M27, got engaged 3 weeks ago. We've been dating for 5 years and I finally got the money to give her the wedding she wanted. Well, 3 days ago we were discussing our guest list, and I asked if she wanted to invite her best friend. Let's call him James, M30. James lives in another state. But since they were friends for 10 years, I thought I could even pay for his travel expenses since it would be great to have her best friend at the wedding. She denied, saying that it would take a lot of work to bring him, and she wanted it to be a family event. Countless times she mentioned that James was like family to her, so I insisted. She got annoyed and said, I didn't even tell him we were engaged. That took me by surprise. I tried to ask why, but she started stonewalling me, and I left her alone. After a couple of hours, I tried to ask her again why she hadn't told him we were engaged, and she still refused to tell me. And I admit, my insecurity got the better of me. In the past, James had confessed he had feelings for her, which she turned down and basically friendzoned him. But by the way she told me, it always sounded like she had him as a backup, something not only me, but her exes realized. She married him online. They always made their WoW characters look like a couple, like wearing the same transmog and shit like that. When she had a fight with her exes, he was always there for her, and etc. I told her that made me uncomfortable, and if she was not planning to tell him, she might as well consider herself single, cause I would not marry someone who couldn't be honest. Yes, I was pretty immature, but she did something even more immature. She texted him while showing me her phone something like, hey, just so you know, I was engaged but not anymore, and sent it to him. I told her to pack her things and leave my house. Ever since she left, she has been calling me, but I refused to answer. My mom called me, because she apparently called my mom, and said that I was an asshole for ending things for such a ridiculous thing. So, AITA? Edit. Sorry for the typo in the title, edit too. Hey guys, I made some dinner and I think I'm gonna go with you/doneover69 position. Cool username BTW. I'm gonna ask her to meet up and ask to see their messages. And to you Foxy Sly Old Stody Fox, I'm already in low contact with my mom, but I'm going to make my decisions after I clear everything up. So I'm kinda promising an update. Update. Hey guys, I just got home after talking to my, still, ex-fiancé, and since a lot of people asked for an update, here it is. But, I want to clarify a few things. As commented on my original post, I paid for the house since I bought it before dating her, and I asked her to move in, since it was close to her job. I work from home since I'm in tech, but she had to go to work, that's why I paid for her car, to help her commute, and honestly her salary is shit. I was her partner, so I didn't see any problem with that. I thought she was the one, despite everything. She is smart, funny, we had chemistry, but I felt betrayed. To the update. We met at a coffee shop on the premise we would discuss how to save our relationship, at least that's what she thought. As soon as we sat down, I asked to see their messages. She got defensive immediately and told me she had deleted everything. I asked to see her phone anyway. She started to cry, ugly cry, asking me to stop. At that point I had already decided I was not going to be part of the relationship anymore, but damn, I was curious. It took a good 20 minutes for her to hand me her phone, a lot of crying, even a waitress asking her if she was okay, so I read the messages. There wasn't any cheating like nudes being exchanged, them professing their love for each other, but what I read still stung. There was a lot of shit talking about me. A lot. Texts and texts of them saying how terrible of a person I was, criticizing my hobbies. I like video games and pro wrestling, saying I wasn't a real man because of them and stuff like that. But there were two topics that caught my eye. One where she had told him I was having trouble getting hard and that was frustrating for her. And one where she was complaining about how she didn't want to be stuck in our relationship. Yes, I was having problems in bed. Because I was sad because my father had passed away 6 months ago, and the stuck thing, I remember telling her that when we got married, if she wanted she could leave her job, and I would provide for both of us. I don't know if she took this the wrong way, but I guess it was related to that. I honestly don't know. By the time I gave her the phone back, she was already giving excuses on why she was saying those things to him. How he was like a therapist for her, and then she asked me, "Don't you complain about me to your friends?" And I simply replied, "No I don't." She started crying again. I took a pretty deep breath and just said, "Just give me the ring back." I didn't have the ring with me, like some suggested. She hesitated a bit, but gave it to me anyway. I stood up and asked her to delete my number and to not bother me anymore. I called her mom and asked her to pick up her daughter's stuff at my place. Her mom is a good person. I'm just realizing I'm going to miss her as I write this. She understood why I decided to end it, but she didn't ask much, and to be honest, I'm glad she didn't. As for my mom, I didn't call her. I just blocked her for things unrelated to this post. I just realized she never had my back in anything. I was always trying to save an already failed mom-son relationship. Before I leave, I just want to clarify. I was never against her having male friends, or any type of friends. People are going to cheat, friends or no friends. I remember my dad saying something to me when I was a teenager. He always said opportunity makes the thief, but I do not agree with that. Anyway, since I have the next 2 weeks off work, I'm going to figure out what to do with the wedding money, drink some booze, play games and watch Monday Night Raw later. Peace. P.S. Sorry for any typos, but I fixed the title now. Edit. A couple of people are asking about the car. Is a 2015 Nissan Versa which she crashed 2 times, both times she rear-ended someone. Never liked the car, weak engine, the interior feels cheap and overall bad, so for all I care she can keep that piece of shit. I would have more luck throwing it off a cliff than selling it. Edit 2, little update. Her mom called me a few hours ago to check on me and to ask when she could come and pick up X stuff. We spoke about the car and she basically forbade me to let her daughter keep the car because, 1, I paid for it. 2, X wouldn't be able to maintain it. So I'm going to keep the car until I'm able to sell it, God help me. Also, some people called the story fake, because they said I wasn't a real man for playing games and yet they played WoW. To be honest, that's on me, cause I wasn't very clear. The real man thing was more about the pro wrestling hobby than the gaming hobby, but in some messages they clearly mocked me for playing some games, Life is Strange series. In one I remember James saying something like, how could a grown-ass man play such a girly game and cry? Yes, I cried while playing Life is Strange. I also cried to RDR2, the cutscene still makes me emotional. I'm a crybaby I guess. Also I want to thank everyone who messaged me to talk about wrestling and games, it really helped me take my mind out of everything. I haven't replied to everyone, but I intend to. If anything happens, I'll let you guys know. Be good people. Update 2. Hey guys. It's been a couple of days since I used this account to tell my story and something happened, but this is a positive update. First I want to say thank you to everyone who reached out to my DMs and commented saying nice things, it felt really good and I appreciate y'all, some of you actually made me tear up with your kind messages. Second, I saw my 2 previous posts were in a YT video of a guy who reads Reddit posts and my update was on our best of Redditor updates, a subreddit I read a lot, and that caught me off guard. But I want to express my gratitude for everyone who gave me advice, told their own story or just told me I was a cool guy. Reading your messages before writing this felt amazing. I also want to say I thought about my engagement a lot, and I have no regrets whatsoever. Yeah, things ended badly and she was not a good person to me in the end, but I just don't hate her. Nor do I wish for her to fail. We had good moments, I felt happy with her and again I really thought she was the one. Feeling hatred was going to harm me more than her. To the update. Her mom came to pick up her stuff and we talked for hours, it felt like therapy. I cried on her shoulders, we laughed, she expressed how much I meant to her family, and that I would always be welcome in her home. It felt so good to hear her say those things to me. Before she left she asked me if I wanted to ask about my ex. I got curious and asked how she was doing. Her words were, she's trying to act stoic, but I know my daughter, she's not taking this well. I left it at that. She gave me a hug and left. About the car, I'm going to donate it and get a tax write-off. But the thing I'm excited about is that I'm going to the Royal Rumble. I never even watched Raw or SmackDown live, but now that I have the extra cash, I'm going to treat myself. Again, thank you all for reaching out, sorry to the people who love drama that this update doesn't have an unwanted pregnancy, a fight, chaos or a plot twist. The truth is that my life is just really boring. Be kind people. Am I the asshole for snapping at my jealous sister during her engagement party, telling her she'll choke on her jealousy one day? Original post. Hi, I'll try to keep it as short as I can. I promise I'll clarify things if there are confusions and sorry about them in advance. I'm 21F and I have 2 siblings. My sister is 24 and engaged. My brother is 28 and married to my sister-in-law who is 25. My parents hosted a family luncheon to celebrate my sister's engagement at their house. I went early to help them set up, my brother and sister-in-law a little bit later than everyone else. My sister and her fiancé arrived last. Everything was going well and everyone was happy until my sister got a text and pulled me aside. She asked me if I could go outside and meet a friend of hers who's going to drop something off for her. I did. The something was a big ball of pure happiness, a Saint Bernard dog with a cute little formal tie around his neck. As adorable as he was, I couldn't bring him in because my sister-in-law is allergic. Her allergy is not severe but still. Everyone in the family knows of it. I told the friend to please wait while I talked to my sister, she did not. I texted my sister that I can't bring him inside. She texted that it was fine, to bring it in because it's a surprise and he's the newest addition to the family. I insisted that I couldn't, then I texted my brother about it because it had been 10 minutes. I'm standing in the driveway with a big doggy that would not stop licking my legs, not knowing what to do. From what I was told inside, my brother pulled my sister aside and asked her not to bring the dog in. That she knows his wife is allergic. She refused, saying that it's an open space, that sister-in-law will be fine. He then told her the news that sister-in-law is pregnant. I already knew and they were waiting until she passed her first trimester. My sister then went outside, dragged the dog and then me in when I resisted. My brother, seeing this, excused himself and left with sister-in-law. We tried resuming the lunch after that but it was awkward at best. When my sister and her fiancé cut the cake, she grabbed her glass of champagne to make a toast. The toast was her rambling about how selfish my brother and his wife were, that they couldn't let her have one day to herself and had to ruin and overshadow it. That they were not the first or last couple to get pregnant. Both of my parents tried to shush her but she was on a roll and went on to call sister-in-law an attention seeker that just had to give the family the first grandchild. I finally had enough and told her that green isn't a good look on her and that she was going to choke on her jealousy one day. Then I got up and left. She called me a bitch on my way out. My mom called me after and told me that it was a bit harsh even if she was harsher. She also suggested that the three of us, siblings, talk it out after things settle a bit. My dad is staying neutral. I haven't heard from relatives that were at the luncheon. AITA. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. Question. Did your sister also know about the pregnancy, like you did, and pulled the dog stunt to make sure they left instead of making a public announcement, like she would have had the roles been reversed? OOP. My sister had no idea about the pregnancy. None of my family did. The only reason I know is because she got sick from the smell of chili cheese fries when we were having a girls' night in. We kind of just looked at each other, and a light bulb went off in our heads. It wasn't like my sister was purposely excluded or anything. And I can confidently say that my brother and sister-in-law would have never hijacked her day to announce their pregnancy. They were planning their own dinner next month to announce it. I assume that's done with, but maybe we can salvage it with a gender reveal if they're up for it. IDK OOP's mom. OOP's sister dragging her out of the house. My mom has always wanted us to talk our issues out because, at the end of the day, you're siblings. But yeah, that being said, I just want to clarify that even though she dragged me, it didn't take much since I have the smallest stature of my siblings, so she didn't use a lot of force. I did call my brother and sister-in-law right after I got home, and they were good for the most part. They're obviously pissed, but since the news is already out, there's not much that can be done about it. Commenter. She didn't even treat the poor puppy well. The last thing a new puppy needs to deal with is the chaos and overstimulation of a family party. And what did they do with the poor wee bugger while they were cutting the cake and making their pissy speeches? Just leave it outside? Inside to piddle in a corner, 'cause the first few weeks with my pups they piddled with gay abandon every few minutes. OP, I ended up keeping him company before the cake cutting thing went down, but yeah, he's not a puppy. If I were to guess, I would say he's maybe 2 years old? I volunteer at a shelter but I'm definitely not a pro. Commenter, NTA, but I'm confused about who the dog was actually for. If the sister is engaged that means she's gonna be leaving home, so is it her dog? If she got a dog for her parents, that's fucking weird to get a big dog for somebody as a surprise gift. Or did she just do it to divert the attention onto herself because she already knew the sister-in-law was pregnant? I'm so confused. OOP, the dog is hers and her fiancé. They both have their own place where the dog will be living, but she brought him to our parents' house to apparently introduce him to the family, mom's words when I asked her about it. Commenter, introduce a full-grown Saint Bernard to the family with an allergic member. You can't get much more flying dog fur than that. Surely the introductions could have been made at a better time. Did your mother know she was going to do this? If so, not cool, mom. OP, I don't think she knew since she and my dad seemed pretty surprised, and then she spent the end of the party looking inside and outside the house for droppings. So IDK commenter. What worries me is this person will see her plan pissed everyone off and she will blame the dog and take it to the pound. Or worse, set it free in a remote area. People like this woman are so wrapped up in their own world, they have zero self-awareness. OP, I didn't think of that TBH. Even though I don't think my sister would ever harm a defenseless animal, I'll keep tabs and make sure he's treated well. Commenter, info, when you say she is allergic, what do you mean? You say not severely, so not a life-threatening condition. But would she be miserable within seconds, or is it a little bit uncomfortable? Allergies have very wide ranges. Also, they don't affect a pregnancy at all. Unless it's life-threatening, of course. The baby won't notice a thing. OOP, I don't think it's within seconds, but she does start sneezing, gets a shortness of breath, and this is an example, I pet a dog and touch her face for whatever reason, her eyes get a bit swollen and puffy. Commenter, I have not read all the comments yet, but what was the fiancé's reaction? Surely he is having second thoughts about marrying your mess of a sister. OOP, he was just kind of standing there, looking awkward as hell, But he didn't seem shocked by her behavior and was standing by her. He even raised his glass. One more clarification. I just want to clarify that they didn't announce their pregnancy at my sister's engagement party. My brother told her and only her privately since she was saying no to him asking her not to bring the dog in. As far as I know, they have a cordial relationship, sister and sister-in-law, not overly friendly but also not standoffish. It could be that my sister-in-law's whims dictate every event. I'm at almost every family event, some I couldn't attend due to personal reasons, but the ones I have been to, nothing of the sort happened. I do get why it's seen as my brother and I against her, but I just feel like in this situation, he's justified. I will also be mentioning the deep clean to my parents. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. OOP is voted NTA Relationship Advice Post. Title: My 21F sister, 24F, keeps jokingly asking me who I'm sleeping with and if I've taken my BC. Birth control. This is getting so weird, guys. I made a post on another sub about something that happened with my family at my sister's engagement party. Gist of it is my sister found out my SIL is pregnant and flipped about them, and me, ruining her day. Since then, has she and I sort of made up? I sent her a text apologizing for what I said and she accepted it, but we didn't have a proper conversation about any of it. Anyway, since my apology, she asked who I'm seeing at the moment, more importantly if it's a man or a woman, if it's men then how many. And if I'm being careful with my BC. I was confused and mildly offended at her acting like I'm the whore of Babylon when she knows the only guy I've had sex with is my long-term ex-boyfriend, but whatever. I told her that I just started seeing a woman and that she's not getting a niece or nephew from me anytime soon, obviously, but it's a joke about my dad who used to warn both us and our older brother when we were younger after every family meeting that he won't have teen mothers or fathers under his roof. I thought it was her own weird way of checking up on my life even if she had never done it before, but she literally sends me a message about my BC every couple of days even though I told her I'm seeing a woman, not that the woman and I are having sex, but you get biology. I don't know how to approach this, like I have zero clue. Advice please? Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. I read the other post. I think she's worried that you'll end up pregnant before her wedding too. I mean, it came out at her engagement luncheon that your SIL is pregnant. So she already thinks your brother Sil is one-upping her. I think she's focused on who else is going to show her up at her wedding. I'm not saying she's right or even sane, but that's the feeling I get. OP, but the thing is that I'm nowhere near a place in my life where I'm even thinking of having a baby. No offense to people who have babies at 21, 22, but I'm not trying to do that. Yeah, accidents can happen, but I'm not sleeping around with men, and even if I was, I would be taking double precautions. Condoms BC. I think she's miffed that my brother is having the first grandbaby and wants to have the second. IDK, but I'm worried about her behavior. TBH, this isn't healthy or normal. Commenter. Hey sis, you keep asking me about this, like it's really important to you. What's going on? OOP, I mean, I will definitely ask her, but I don't want her to get defensive because she perceives me on my brother's side in all of this, which yes, I'm a little bit guilty of that. Update post, October 24th, 2024, 8 days later, 5 weeks from OG post. Hi guys. It's been around a month or so and TBH, I don't have that much of an update, but a lot of people have been asking me about the doggy and it's easier than telling people individually, so here it is. First things first, the update on my sibling situation. My brother and SIL have gone LC with my sister until they get a proper apology, which hasn't happened yet but I think it will happen soon. My sister has been talking to my mom about wanting to be in our future nephew-niece's life, so there's that at least. Also, my SIL is officially out of her first trimester and she and the baby are healthy and thriving thankfully. She has been having a bit of a hard time when it comes to smells and pregnancy stuff, but I think that's to be expected. Don't come at me, just from what I've read. We've also been planning a gender reveal party for next month, so we're just focusing on the positive stuff for now. As for my sister and I did send her an apology for how harsh I was with her at the party and she accepted it and apologized for calling me a bitch, but it's been so damn weird when it comes to our dynamic, especially since she's suddenly all up in my business about who I'm sleeping with. But that's another issue. Now for the awaited update, Barkley. Turns out the big fluff ball has an adorable bark, one you wouldn't expect when seeing him, hence his name. As some of you predicted, my sister was not up for the massive job that is taking care of a Saint Bernard, and a week and a half after the party, she called and asked me to find him another home. I volunteer at a shelter and know a lot of people who would love to adopt. I honestly wanted to keep him myself because I've grown attached, but I live in an apartment and not only would it be impossible, it would also be cruel to keep him cooped up like that. Luckily, A friend of a friend has the space for him to be happy and safe and took him in with the promise of letting me see him whenever we're both free, and now I get random pics and videos of Barkley in his element all happy and bark fighting with the guy's next door neighbor's Yorkie. Don't worry, there's fences between them. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you guys for all the advice and opinions. I appreciate all of you. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. I mean, I'm more worried about the other neighbors who have to listen to that, but it seems like things at least worked out for Barkley. OOP, I get your concern, but from what I've seen of the guy's neighborhood, went to check it out and meet him first, it's a lot of families and most of the kids have pets, cats, dogs and a parrot, guy's intel, so it seems like they're used to pet noises. After my fiance's shocking comment about my late wife at family dinner, I'm questioning our engagement to protect my kids. For background, I am 43M and had 2 children, Sam, 21M, and Liz, 16F, with my late wife Kayla. Our children were 10 and 15 when Kayla died. I won't go into details, but she was hit by an intoxicated driver on her way home from work. She was the true love of my life, and our family was devastated by her departure. For the benefit of my children, I made a self-promise to wait at least a few years before dating again. I met Amanda, who is now my fiancée, 3 years after Kayla's death. We took our time, and it wasn't until we had been dating for a year or so that I introduced her to my children. We are now engaged after 3 years of dating. Although they are not particularly close, Amanda and my children get along well and show each other respect. Amanda has never gone too far or attempted to take their mother's place. When we first started dating, Amanda was a little insecure about my being a widower. She frequently asked me if I would still be with Kayla if she hadn't died during those initial months. She finally stopped bringing up the what-ifs when I reminded her that I didn't like to think about them and kept my responses succinct. Let's get to the problem. Recently, my parents celebrated our engagement with a family supper. My parents, my late wife's sister and her husband, my 2 children, Amanda and I were all present. With everyone engaging in small talk and talking about their wedding plans, the dinner was going well. About halfway through, my mother commented on how pleased she was that, like Kayla, I had discovered a fresh spark with someone else. Until Amanda chuckled and remarked, "I'm glad she died, otherwise I would have never gotten him to myself." I don't think anyone gave much thought to the sincere remark. The dinner's atmosphere instantly changed. Everyone, especially my children, grew tense. As though it were a joke, Amanda appeared to notice the abrupt change and made an embarrassing attempt to laugh it off. Since that was the first time she had ever said something like that, I was really completely frozen. Liz stood up and walked out to the car while my children stared in horror. I was still in shock, but Sam lingered a little longer, as though he was waiting for me to speak. In other words, the supper was essentially spoiled. We all headed home after I hastily bid farewell to everyone and gathered Amanda. 3 days have passed since my daughter last spoke to Amanda or me. I asked my kid what he felt I should do because I was getting sick of the silence. As an adult, I don't care who another adult marries, but I don't want a woman who talks like that about our mother around my sister, he told me. His remark lingered with me, and I'm now thinking about ending the engagement. Although she has never said anything like this before, I'm concerned that if I ignore it this once, it will happen more often and have an impact on my daughter. I just want to do what's good for my kids, therefore I need some outside input. What if her remark caused me to call off our engagement? Edit. Whoa, after posting this, I never thought I'd receive that much advice so fast. I appreciate all of your comments, including those who referred to me as a bad father. I believe that what you said helped me get my head out of the sand. Before talking to my fiancé tonight, I'll attempt to have a private conversation with my kids. We'll see where it goes from there. However, I believe that my fiancé and I are no longer together. I'll provide an update on the progress of the conversations with everyone later tonight or tomorrow. Again, I want to thank you all for helping me to straighten out. Edit 2. I attempted to amend this post, but it was not accepted. First update. During the dinner party, did my fiancé apologize to anyone? No, she didn't. To be honest, I don't think she even realized, or has realized, that what she said was incorrect. 2. Is social anxiety a problem for my fiancé? I'm not aware of it. She has never displayed symptoms of social anxiety in the time I've known her, and she has no past history of the condition. 3. What was my late wife's age? We were the same age as Kayla, who was 37 when she went away. Amanda is 41 years old now. Many people wanted to know when Amanda and I first met, as well as the timing of Kayla's death. I met Amanda around 3 years after Kayla's death, and she has now been gone for about 6 years. I didn't initially bring up their ages since I didn't think it was important, but I can see why others might be interested. Here's the complete update now that I've answered the most common queries I received. The day after I spoke with my children, I am writing this update. Since my fiancée works evenings most days of the week, she departed for work at approximately 5:30 last night. I called my son and asked if he could come over and chat with his sister and me. He lives in an apartment close to his school and attends a nearby college. He chose to live a few blocks from campus when he started college because he wanted to move out yet still be near us. I called him and his sister into the living room to speak when he got there. After they were both seated, I bluntly informed them that I no longer believed the wedding was going to take place and that Amanda's remark was inappropriate. I apologized to them, as I was advised to do here. I apologized to them for allowing the stress to rise in our home and for not dealing with it sooner. I told my daughter that I understood why she hadn't contacted me and that I was sorry for letting her believe that I approved of anything Amanda said. After we got back from that dinner, I felt quite cowardly and wanted to do everything in my power to mend my relationship with my children. My daughter told me throughout the conversation that she was outraged by Amanda's remark and I was much more offended when I didn't instantly stand up for her mother. She went on to say that for the 2 years she has known Amanda, she has sensed that she has been attempting to gradually distance herself and Sam from me. Liz used the time my son moved out to begin his sophomore year of college as an example. Amanda was the one who jumped at the chance to move out when he brought it up. Liz claims that the person who encouraged Sam to move out the most was Amanda. To be clear, I never opposed Sam leaving home, but I did let him know that he was free to stay at home while he was in college and even after that until he found a place that suited him. I questioned Sam about if he moved out because he felt pushed out by Amanda. He claimed that before telling everyone he intended to move, he hadn't felt pressured, but after he made the announcement, my fiancée persisted in pressuring him to do so. Every time she mentions college, Amanda keeps pushing her to go out of state. Liz interrupted. Liz has made it clear that she wants to attend the institution Sam is now enrolled in and has no plans to go out of state. According to Liz, Amanda seems to be waiting for her to graduate from high school and enroll in college so that she may move out as well. Many of the comments were correct when they said that Amanda's subtle remarks eventually led to her attempting to drive my children away from me. Liz expressed her concern that too much damage would have been done between us by the time I finally realized how Amanda was acting. I apologized to my children for the delay in my realization and for making them walk on eggshells for so long. I gave them a hug and told them that they are my first concern, not Amanda or anybody else. I made sure to let Sam know that I will always be there for him and his sister, even when they are far into adulthood, because several comments mentioned that my kid still needs his father even though he is grown. About 2 hours passed during the entire chat. It was emotional for all of us, and we covered a lot of terrain. To put it briefly, Amanda and I are finished. I've made it a point to explain to my children that Amanda, as an adult, is accountable for her words and that none of this is their responsibility. Right now, my kids and I are getting along okay, but they haven't completely returned to trusting me, and it's likely that they won't for some time. That's perfectly acceptable to me. All I want is for my children to feel at home. I intend to speak with Amanda tomorrow as she has the day off from work. In addition, I want to give my mom a call to find out why she felt it was acceptable to bring up Kayla at the dinner. My kid is staying with Sam tonight and tomorrow night because I don't want her here when everything goes wrong. I'm not happy with how things turned out with Amanda, but I'd rather have happy, healthy children than a wife again. That's where I am at the moment. I appreciate all of the guidance and even the harsh words, everyone. After I cancel with Amanda, I'll provide another update. Second update. Alright everyone, the long-awaited update is finally here. My kids and I had spoken, made amends, and my daughter was staying with her brother to be clear of the drama surrounding my now ex-fiancé when we last spoke. I called my mom to inform her of the issue before facing the worst portion of the day, breaking it up with Amanda. Many of the comments advised me not to be critical of my mother's remark. After giving it some thought, I understood that my mother's remark about Amanda was meant as a compliment, which was verified when we spoke on the phone. Bless her heart, my mother felt terrible about the whole thing and thought it was all because of her one remark. I reassured her that she had never been held responsible for any of this and that she was not at all to blame for the circumstances. Before I let her go, we continued our conversation. At approximately 9:15 a.m., the call ended, and I was left to wait for Amanda to awaken. I waited until approximately 11:10 a.m. to seat her down for a conversation because I didn't want to surprise her by waking her up at 10:30 a.m. I had my phone set to record in my back pocket because many commenters suggested surreptitiously recording the chat, which I thought was a good idea. Although I didn't anticipate her trying anything extreme, it's better to be careful than sorry. The conversation went about as well as you might think, that is, not at all. We sat in the living room after I assured her that we had to talk and that it was serious. As we sat down, I started talking about the remark she made about Kayla at my parents' house. How it affected my kids, how it made me feel, and why she didn't apologize or acknowledge it. I informed her that I expected her to apologize to my in-laws, parents, and, above all, my children. Amanda didn't show much emotion during my entire conversation, with the exception of her eyes being a little wider than usual. She asked me directly after I was done, "So if I apologize to everyone, will we go back to normal?" I bluntly told her, no. I clarified that there were other problems besides the remark she made at dinner. She was trying to do the same with Liz, I informed her, and I knew she had put a lot of pressure on Sam to move out when he wasn't even sure about it. Despite my best efforts to keep my children out of it, I told her that the primary reason I no longer saw a future with her was the way my children described how she treated them. Amanda remained mute until I informed her that we were finished. Panic seemed to start at that point. She insisted repeatedly that she would make amends with my children and apologize to everyone. I told her that we were done even though I would appreciate any apology. By this time, she was crying uncontrollably and asked why I wasn't willing to try to mend our relationship. I told her that although I still loved her, I couldn't risk my children suffering the same kind of harm again. I became irate and questioned her about why she was forcing my children to leave their own house. I was really caught off guard by her reaction, but many commenters were right on the money about who she really is. "Well," said Amanda, "I had no idea you expected me to spend the rest of my life housing someone else's children." I became enraged. I told her to go after a minute or so. I made it plain that my children could travel anywhere they wanted to, especially in a home that I paid for and owned. After attempting to argue, she packed her luggage and went to stay with a friend. As a precaution, I sent myself a copy of the phone recording via email. I have everything I need to keep my name clear, even though the talk was only around 25 minutes long, not quite as long as the conversation with my kids. I've contacted my kids to let them know that Amanda is permanently gone, to let them know that they may return home at any moment, and to let my son know that he can move back in fully if he wants to. I still have to call my parents and in-laws to apologize for this chaotic scenario, and my daughter is returning from her brother's house in the afternoon. Even when Amanda is not at my house, she keeps calling and urging us to attempt to resolve the issue. She is not welcome to live here again, but I will allow her to visit in the coming days so she may get the other items. To tell the truth, I am a little devastated. I still adore Amanda in spite of everything she did, and I doubt I will for some time to come. But I'll be alright. I just want to utilize this as a chance to strengthen my relationship with my children and concentrate on the family that needs me right now. I want to thank everyone again for your assistance in the comments. Making amends with my family was made possible in large part by the guidance you provided. Update 3. To be honest, everything that happened seems like it happened ages ago, which makes me realize how old I am. I'm 44 now, heh. Sam will turn 22 soon, and Liz turned 17 a few months ago. Since I ended my relationship with Amanda, my life has actually been rather calm. I'll briefly review my most recent update, which was posted nearly a year ago. Amanda spent almost a week at her friend's house after our conversation. I used that time to pack up her clothes and other little belongings, as suggested by the comments. I made sure that the only things she needed to come into the house for were the larger items, like chairs and decor. As numerous commenters advised, I also had the locks replaced. I appreciate that you all considered items like the locks that I had not even considered. After that, I was surprised to find that everything proceeded really swiftly and pleasantly. She stopped by, gathered her belongings, and gave me the ring even though I didn't want it back. It was quiet and we didn't talk much, but that didn't last. She began stalking me on social media a few weeks later in an attempt to get another shot. Her antics had worn me out by that point, so I blocked her, and my children followed suit. Many critics were right when they said that I didn't truly love her, but rather who I believed she was. It greatly eased the transition. It's been over a year since my kids and I blocked her, and she hasn't spoken since, so I'm sure it will continue to be that way. I've come to the realization that I'm completely content to remain alone for the rest of my life as a result of this entire circumstance. That may be depressing to others, but it's more about acceptance to me. My decision to break up with Amanda helped me realize that I didn't love her as much as I loved Kayla, and I doubt I ever will. Neither I nor anyone I might date would be treated fairly by it. With my family by my side, I'm happy. I now have a greater respect for my children as a result of this event. My love for them has grown even more as a result of their maturity and understanding, something I never thought possible at their age. Sam's flat is still there. He denied my offer to move back in because he truly appreciates having his own bachelor pad, which I can understand because I was in his position once. Since the second semester of this year, he has been doing a part-time job that he truly enjoys. Although I'm not positive, I feel that he might have met someone because I know my child. Liz is enjoying the summer before her final year and is fantastic as always. I'm quite pleased of her because she made the honor roll every year of high school, including this year. When I consider how hardworking and genuinely excellent both of my children are, I find it difficult to keep from boasting. I'm sorry for talking endlessly about them in this post, but I adore them and can't stop talking about them. Other fathers can probably identify, hey. I want to express my gratitude once more to everyone who has been following my story and giving me all of your wonderful, and not so great, advice. Additionally, be aware that I have read your own accounts of such occurrences in the comments. I apologize that many of you lack the network of support that I have been able to provide for my children. I wish I could give all of you gigantic dad hugs for taking the time to share your own tales. I truly appreciate it. At my best friend's wedding, the groom admitted he wasn't sure if he wanted to marry her. What should I do? Original post. Alright, was just a MOH in a wedding that ended in an absolute shit show, and I have to tell someone about it because I don't even know what to do or if I should do anything about this. I'm at a total loss. This was a first for me. My childhood friend was getting married today to her high school sweetheart. The wedding was a long time coming. They've been together for 6.5 years and share a 2-year-old son together. They've been engaged for 3 years now, because they delayed planning the wedding after she unexpectedly got pregnant with their son. So now the wedding was finally here. Earlier this year she set a date and started planning. I was engaged this year and got married in July and originally was just supposed to be a regular bridesmaid. The bride's sister was supposed to be the MOH, but they had a falling out. Basically, the bride would always call her sister ranting about her fiancé every time they would fight, which caused the sister to form a pretty negative opinion of him. Sister lives across several states away and doesn't see everything that goes on here. Her mind jumped right to abuse and she told the bride if she marries him, she's not coming to the wedding. Now here's the thing. Their relationship isn't perfect. They are young. They went through a lot very quickly and very young. Getting engaged, unexpected pregnancy, moving in together, all happened very fast. They fought a lot. I had my concerns at first. But after spending a lot more time with them I saw how much they genuinely loved each other, parented their son together well, and we're working towards a future together. The bride and I have been close friends for so much of our lives, she is like family to me. I care for her deeply. When she asked me to step in as MOH, I said yes for those reasons. Cut to today, the wedding day. Everything was going well. Groom was getting emotional when they did their private vows, and before walking down the aisle he was still wiping tears. It warmed my heart. Looking back now, I wonder what the heck was going through his head. Not sure they were tears of joy. As the night went on the bride mingled and danced with her family. She had so much family that traveled from many states away to be here and she wanted to be a good hostess to them. The groom was usually off talking with his own family when she was doing this, but for the most part they stayed together. They sat together, ate together, danced to a few songs, played the shoe game, then they were mingling separately with their families. Didn't think that was a big deal as this is often how receptions go with so many people there pulling you in opposite directions. At one point they both went inside the venue, reception was outside, for a while and then she came out alone. She continued to chat with family and then after a little bit realized he was nowhere to be found. After a while of searching, we found him wandering around outside, going for a walk. Bride was pretty distraught at this point. I will add that the groom did have a good amount to drink during the party. Apparently when they went inside the venue, he was angry at her for not spending enough time with him during the party and said they were hardly together the whole night. Once he got back from his little walk, they were just arguing inside their room I guess. At this point a lot of guests were leaving, and the ones left me, my husband, the rest of the wedding party, and their immediate families, didn't really know what to do. We were supposed to do a big send-off for them, so we were just kind of waiting for that. We packed up all the stuff, broke down all the tables and chairs, loaded it in cars, and just waited. Me and the other bridesmaids pulled her aside to talk to her, but she was pretty deflated at this point. Apparently the groom had taken his ring off and told her he wasn't sure he wanted to be married to her. At their wedding. Mind you, they've been living together for 3 years. They share a child. They've been dating since 2018. Nothing about this was rushed other than maybe their ages. They are quite young, but I never thought of them as immature until this stunt he pulled at their wedding. Over not spending enough time together at the reception. Like sorry, why not just not leave her side then? I just don't understand at all. We finally decided to just load their stuff in their car and tell them it's all loaded and they should probably go ahead and go to get some sleep before their flight tomorrow. At the car we hugged goodbye and I left to come home. This girl is one of my absolute best friends. I hate that her beautiful wedding was ruined by her husband being petty and stubborn. She was in tears and distraught on her own wedding day. It's just awful. I don't really know where to go from here, if this is at all normal and something they will get past, or if this is more serious. I genuinely am rooting for them, but this whole situation just has me sitting in my car feeling confused and worried for my friend. They're leaving for their honeymoon tomorrow. Don't feel like it's an appropriate time to reach out and try to talk to her about all of this. Any advice is appreciated, I guess. I'm thinking I check in via text a few times while they're traveling on the honeymoon and make sure it's going okay, and make plans to see her when she gets back and we can debrief everything then if she wants to get into it. Starting to think the sister might have been onto something. Relevant comments. Night woman cometh, ooh. Lots of problems here. The SIS was onto something. If the bride is constantly calling her with complaints, fights, the groom is not a good fit for her. 2. The groom was drunk. This took his feelings from a 3, hey, can we spend the rest of the reception together? To a 10, you are dead to me because you are ditching me at our wedding night for totally reasonable reasons. 3. Sounds like this wedding spat was just a representation of chronic issues between them. If this relationship is going to last, they need to see a therapist. This is beyond your aid, unfortunately personally. I wouldn't text or say anything today or tomorrow. She is probably distraught. They need to work out some things on their honeymoon. Maybe check in with her when she's back, or she'll reach out to you if she needs advice. That's what I would want anyways, but you know her best, Warren Finn, literally this. I think when you said the sister doesn't see everything that goes on, I do, you're off. By a lot. You're seeing the smoke show. The sister is hearing about the reality. OOPC. I'll add a little context here though. I grew up with the bride and besides her sister I'm probably the only friend she has that is her friend. I did not know her husband before they got together and still didn't know him super well before she got pregnant. Her other friends are all extensions of him somehow. His siblings and in-laws, his friends' girlfriends. I feel like a lot of the issue is that she needs more people to actually talk to. Her sister will always take her side. His family will always take his side and shrug things off as that's just how he is. I have just tried my best to be somewhat of a Switzerland presence for her. She knows I support her, but in that, I also support her relationship and I know marriage is hard, especially with kids. So I try to support them both. Legitimate_cat 3435. I have so many questions. Just trying to understand the dynamics of this group. 1. In what scenario did she not grow up in the same house as her sister? 2. What were his parents doing at the reception and were they aware of his hissy fit? 3. Is it safe to assume that his parents were still there at the end? 4. What were her parents doing at the end? 5. Who had their child? OOP half-sisters through adoption by the dad too. His parents sat at their own table and didn't seem to care about mingling with her family, but I don't want to jump to conclusions as to why. 3. His parents were still there at the end and his dad looked really disappointed when helping us load their car. I pulled his mom aside and asked her to go talk to her son because she may be the only one he listens to right now. She did talk to him and was the one who ended up getting him to come out of his room. IDK what was said. 4. Her parents were helping clean up and I don't think they knew the full extent of what was going on. They were still talking to guests. It wasn't until the next day when I talked to both of them that I realized they were not aware of what the groom said about being unsure about the marriage, taking his ring off, etc. They thought they had a little spat that got resolved quickly before they left. 5. Groom's mom had the baby most of the time and towards the end of the night he fell asleep in the groom's sister's arms. He went home with the bride's parents that night because they're watching him while they go on honeymoon. Update. It's been a week now and a lot of people asked for an update. Some people on my original post were very adamant this relationship was abusive, citing red flags, research evidence, and personal anecdotes that this story reminded you of. There were also several comments saying I was overreacting, the groom was just drunk, and they will probably be fine. I wanted to clarify some things from my original post. While my friend, the bride, does have her sister, she was the only child growing up in her house. In many ways she truly is an only child. She is at least the only child of her mother. She already had a small circle, her family lives all over the country and is not involved very much in her life. That was not the groom's doing. He did not isolate her. Secondly, I would like to clarify their ages, because I didn't mention them in my last post. They started dating at 15, and 16M, and got married at 21 and 22. Part of the reason I omitted it originally is because I didn't want people jumping to conclusions about their relationship because of their ages. There is a lot of stigma around getting married young, especially on Reddit. And I get it. The odds are stacked against you. That's why I decided to put their ages in now, because I realize it's important to understand they really do have so much growing and learning to do still. Now on to the update. It's pretty short. She Snapchatted me later that night after they got to their hotel and said as he began to sober up, he was realizing all that he ruined and was very apologetic. He realized they didn't get to do their last dance, their send-off, the bouquet and garter toss. She said he was crying. They talked it all out and she said it sucks that their wedding ended that way, but it was amazing up to that point, and the important thing is that they're married and going to spend the rest of their lives together. She said they're going to work past it and I asked how. Do you have a plan? Just want to be sure. She said they will work on their communication skills and I once again recommended therapy. She said they'd talk about it and consider it, then they were off on their honeymoon and seemed to be having a great time. I've checked in a bit when she has Snapchatted me some pics and they're doing well. She knows she can always come to me, and she knows I'll support her no matter what. Right now I'm gonna do everything I can to help uplift them as a couple and help them form some better communication habits. Her sister didn't support her choice to stay with him and that's why sister is not in her life anymore. I don't want that. I will support her choice. Period. A few key takeaways. Be careful drinking on your wedding day. You don't need that much. The last thing you want is to get drunk on your wedding day and do something stupid as a result that you can't take back. One commenter put it really well. You may be able to overlook your partner's ugly parts now, but are you willing to let this be your life if they never change? I know there's a lot of people in this subreddit that are getting married, so I hope someone can learn something from this story. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I skimmed OOP's responses, and she literally says the friend likes to use Snapchat because the messages disappear, so the groom won't see them if he goes through her phone. Then she adds a nice little tidbit that he's very controlling. But somehow the takeaway is to be careful about drinking on your wedding day. And the couple is doing well? I'll chalk OOP's utter lack of discernment up to her age as well because I'm going to assume she's also 21. 22. Comment 2. He definitely sounds like an abuser, but I guess OP is one of those people who thinks abuse only counts if it's physical. But he's definitely emotionally abusive at the least. What OP is seeing is an abuse-love bomb cycle. OP mistakenly thinks the love bomb stuff proves that he loves her so much, when in fact that's merely a tactic to keep her from leaving him due to the abuse. Comment 3. How is the main takeaway? Don't drink too much at your wedding. People get wasted on their wedding day and don't take their ring off and say they shouldn't be married. I would say that's far more frequent than whatever this is. Comment 4. OOP missed the point so hard I'm almost tempted to call her a troll. Like, how do you write that all out, then not have a fucking epiphany that the relationship was built on rotten foundations? Oh, but I've seen how much they love each other. And love is rarely enough to fix a fundamentally broken relationship. Those two need actual, professional help and all they're doing is sticking their head in the sand.